Hey guys, JKman99 here and welcome to my Lost videos. Alright, so this is part 3 of season 6 of my version of Lost. And this is the end, guys. We only have 5 episodes and then that's it. And you will know all the things I came up with for my version of Lost. I'm very excited to get started and show you guys what I came up with. And so yeah, I got nothing else. Let's get going. Episode 16 is called The Candidate, which is a Jack, Locke, and Claire-centric episode. And this episode will combine the events of The Last Recruit and The Candidate. So at the very start of the episode, we do not see Ben and Locke going to the hospital in the ambulance. That scene is removed completely, and that is primarily because Ben is not in the boom world. So this episode starts off with Jack and his mother going through paperwork trying to find Christian's will. His mom finds it after searching for 3 years and then asks Jack if he knows a Claire Littleton. This is set before the event when Claire is on the plane with Sun, and as we continue, just another friendly reminder that the Bust World group is now Kate, Sawyer, Hurley, and Locke. They're all together now. The next scene at the beginning of this episode, Hurley tells Sawyer that Ben, Richard, and Lee are planning to blow up the Orchid after they leave the barracks. Sawyer asks, "Who the hell is Lee?" Hurley says, "Carl's father. And there's going to be a conflict with Locke if we are planning on taking away his ticket off the island." Sawyer says, "Fine by me. We got our own plan." Sawyer tells Hurley the plan regarding Widmore's sub. Hurley tells Sawyer that Richard said it would be dangerous for the world if Locke leaves because he's infected by the monster. Sawyer says, "Relax, Hugo. If they take the sub and Richard blows up the Orchid, then Locke can't leave." Everyone's getting reacquainted here. We see Barb hugging the children, Zach and Emma, and she apologizes to the children for being away from them for so long. Locke calls for a meeting and gathers everyone in the center of Otherton. Locke says it's so nice to have everyone back together. Locke says to Hugo, "I know you said you came to talk, Hugo, but I'm not sure what there is to talk about. My goal is to get everyone off the island and ensure that each one of us is able to leave this island safely. Do you have a problem with that?" Hurley said he doesn't. Locke says, "Fantastic." Kate asks Locke, "What about Aaron? Do you want him to also leave the island safely?" Locke glares at Kate, but doesn't verbally respond, and tells everyone to pack up their things and they would be leaving shortly. Kate doesn't give up at first. She says, "Hey, I'm talking to..." Sawyer interrupts her. "Kate, stop." Locke's not responding because there's nothing to say. Sawyer convinces Kate that Aaron isn't on the island. Sawyer says, "You got conned to get back here. At that time, Ben and Locke believed they needed you to get back, and now Locke's back. And according to Hurley, Ben's back. So they're just using you. And you've asked everyone here. No one has seen Aaron. He ain't here." After that, Kate begrudgingly agrees and also agrees to leave with him. Then Zoe shows up at the barracks and demands Locke's immediate surrender to Widmore. Then she says, "You took something from us and we want it back." Locke says he doesn't know what she's talking about. And Zoe says she's talking about the island, stupid, and therefore he needs to surrender it back to Widmore. She goes onto her walkie and says, "Show him what we're capable of." And we hear a missile of some kind, and we see one of the barracks houses blown up. After she blows up one of the houses, she gives him the walkie and says, "Call us when you're ready to surrender yourself." Then he uses a stick he made to smash the walkie after she leaves. He says, "Well, here we go." So back on the boom world, Claire and Aaron show up for her appointment to get Christian's will read to her. The lawyer's office offers a daycare facility, so Claire leaves Aaron at daycare. Then Claire runs into Desmond. Claire never says she ended up in the hospital because those scenes were cut from my version. Desmond tells her he knows a good will lawyer, but it turns out the lawyer he was referring to was the exact same person already reading the will. The lawyer that Desmond introduces Claire to is Lizzie Calloway, played by Janetta Arnett, and not Alana. So this is the same lawyer that was with Susan Lloyd when she was trying to get custody of Walt in season 2. Back on the island, Locke tells the others they need to attack Widmore and steal their sub before they fire on them again. No mention of any plane. Remember, there's no Ajira plane. Locke asks Kate and Sawyer to go get the Zodiac and the Outrigger, and he would go to the barracks boathouse to see if there are any other boats they can use so they can sail over to Hydra Island together. Locke also says that Zoe must have known the code to get through the sonic fence. It hasn't been changed since the Purge. So he asks Sawyer to change the code to 65619206 so Zoe can't get back in. Sawyer gives Hurley the code for the sonic fence and tells him to wait 30 minutes and then follow him and Kate to the Zodiac, as only the three of them are going over to Hydra Island. Hurley asks about the Martins and the kids, but Sawyer says they can't trust them because they are others and they need to look out for themselves, and that Barb lady won't let them take the kids. So back in Boom World, Sayid and Nadia see on the news that Jin was found not guilty. There's a news conference, so they know the police will be coming for him next. Jin's lawyer, Duncan Forrester, who was Kate's lawyer in the Eggtown episode, says that Jin's wife's son will be making a brief statement. So Sun goes up to the microphone and says, on behalf of her husband, she is grateful to have her husband back and thankful for all the support she has gotten these past 3 years. Jin looks annoyed when Sun was speaking English. Duncan says that this was made possible because the police were able to find the real murderer and an arrest would be made shortly. So because of this scene, there are no hospital scenes of Sun and Jin at all. She's not pregnant and there's no Ji-on. So that's actually kind of huge. In the Boom World, there's no Ji-on. She had never gotten pregnant. So as Sayid starts to pack up and leave, the police show up at the house. And Sayid asks Nadia to stall them. When Nadia opens the door, the policeman introduces himself as Officer Tunde. Yep, if you guys haven't figured it out, Officer Tunde is Mr. Echo. It's the same name he uses when he was a priest. So now Mr. Echo has left the priesthood and now he's posing as a police officer. Echo asks if he can ask her a few questions and he sees an empty suitcase. So we go to the backyard where Sayid's trying to escape, but he is tripped up by Officer Mike Walton, who arrests Sayid. Remember, Sawyer's not in the Boom World, so Sawyer cannot be the one arresting Sayid. Back in the Bust World, once at the Zodiac, Kate says, so we go to Hydra and we come back with both boats. Isn't that going to get Whitmore's attention? Sawyer tells Kate the plan to ditch Locke and the others and just meet up with Hurley. She has reservations because of what the monster did to everyone else, and if Locke is working with the monster, what's he going to have in store for everyone else? Sawyer says he doesn't know, but we can't save everyone. We got to take care of us. After Hurley spends some time talking with Barb and the kids, Hurley escapes the group and makes a run for it. Unlike the rest of the others, only Locke notices, but doesn't seem to mind that Hurley's running away. So then only Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley take the Zodiac to go over to Hydra Island. So that big Sun Jin reunion that happens in this episode does not happen because they're in the Boom World. Speaking of the Boom World, we're going to go back to the Boom World, which shows Jack showing up for the will reading. Now, this should be obvious, but Jack does not show up with his son, David. He has no son in the Boom World. Okay? So I know in Lighthouse we didn't go over that, but yeah. Jack does not have a son in the Boom World. Even though Jack was supposed to meet Claire at the airport and couldn't find her, he did not know he was her sister until they met for the will reading. Jack and Claire had never spoken. They had only left each other voicemails, so they had never spoken directly until they met for the will reading. Right after Jack finds out that Claire is his sister, Jack is called away by the hospital because of Desmond hitting Locke with his car. Jack recognizes him from the airport 3 years ago. So back on the island, Locke huddles up with the remaining others and tells them that Sawyer, Kate, and Hurley stole their boats so they don't have enough to get over to Hydra Island as there are no boats in the boathouse. Amelia says, I've been here for years and there's a ton of other rafts all over the island. But Locke says they are out of time and we saw what they can do to the houses. So Locke tells them that the Dharma Orchid Station has an old donkey wheel in it that he once used to leave the island. It's not as stable as the sub, but it'll work to get off of the island. Barb is protective of the children and is concerned about them getting hurt using this transportation. But Locke assures her he just wants to get them home. Then Locke tells the group, I have shown this lack of faith before, with a button in the hatch, so the island itself feels like that button now. And as you know, I was paralyzed before I got here. The island healed me. But since then I've been off of this island, and I was still healed when I left this island. There's a better world waiting for us off of this island. Jacob rejected all of us, so let's leave him and all of this behind. We don't need the island. Most of the others cheer, but Amelia and Barb quietly talk. They remind themselves that they went with Hurley because Jacob said to, so they need to trust that Jacob wants them to listen to Locke at this time. Meanwhile, on Hydra Island, when Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley reach Hydra Island, they are greeted by Zoe. She asks where Locke is, and Sawyer says he's still on the other island. Zoe radios Widmore, who tells Zoe that after losing Penny and not being able to combine both universes, his plan is to send Ford or Reyes into the Boom universe to go get Penny back. Hopefully that will work. And if so, we can then send anyone else over there to save this universe or the other one. We already got what we need. We needed Locke to surrender so we could take back the island and get Ford and Reyes. So Locke doesn't need to surrender anymore. We already got what we need. Bring in Ford and Reyes and take out Locke. So Zoe makes them get on their knees, says the deal is off, and orders the strike on Locke. When Widmore tries to take out Locke, he takes out the power grid that powers the pylons. The smoke monster appears and kills all the rest of the others, including Amelia, Aldo, Barb, and even the two kids, Zach and Emma. But that part isn't shown on screen. The two kids hug right before the monster attacks. All of the others are killed, except Locke. Then the monster approaches Locke, but does not harm him. And Locke says to the monster in frustration, "Why did you do that? You're getting what you want!" And then the monster floats away. So this scene hints that it did appear that Locke was actually trying to save the others. So back on the Boom world, Jack wakes up Locke at the hospital and reminds him that they met 3 years ago on Oceanic 815. Jack tells Locke he's a candidate for back surgery to fix his legs, but Locke declines. After this, Jack doesn't visit Cooper or Helen because Locke's father is still on the run, and Locke and Helen have broken up and never got back together. So all that part is deleted from my version. Back on the island, when Sawyer refuses to get into the cages, Widmore threatens to kill Kate. Widmore says that he has a list of names from Jacob and that Ford and Reyes are on it, but not Austin. Sawyer, remembering the names on the cave wall, let them put them in the cages. Widmore tells them, "Believe it or not, I'm locking you up for your own good." And Sawyer says, "Yeah, I don't believe it." Back in the Boom world, Jack goes to Bernard's dentist office to look for Locke's medical records on his oral surgery. Bernard asks why he wants to know how John got hurt, and Jack begins to tell him that he met John 3 years ago, and Bernard interrupts to say, "Flight 815?" And he says, "I was on that plane too, and recalls you flirting with my wife." Bernard says those records are confidential, but then suggests to Jack that he goes to the police instead because the accident was a result from an assault. Back on the island, Sawyer and Kate are talking in the cages. Sawyer explains the names that were in the caves, and that hers was crossed off. Kate asked why they are in there, and Sawyer says he thinks Widmore is trying to use them to save the universe. Hurley says he has a funny way of showing it. Then the smoke monster attacks and kills a lot of Widmore's people. And then, as Kate is trying to reach for the keys to let themselves out of the cages, Locke shows up and lets Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley out of the cages. So in the actual show, this is the part where Jack shows up to let him out of the cages, but since Jack's not here, in my version, it's Locke that lets him out of the cages. After rescuing them from the polar bear cages, Kate asks where all the others are, and Locke says that they died back on the main island. Kate says, "Even the kids?" And Locke says that the kids were killed too. Sawyer says that they gotta get back to the main island before the monster gets them. And Locke asks, "Now where are we supposed to go when we get there, James?" Sawyer says, "The Orchid. We saw Romans disappear there, so that's how we leave." And Hurley says, "Yeah, we portaled to get here, so we can portal our way out of here, if we want." Locke says the Orchid was rigged with C4 by Widmore to get them all in a confined space to kill them so he could take over the island, just like he wanted to kill everyone before when they sent the freighter to the island. Locke says we gotta take the sub. And Sawyer says, great, that's what I've been saying all along. And Hurley says, wait. Richard says that Locke isn't supposed to leave the island, but Sawyer says, screw Richard. Kate says she will help them get to the sub, but she's not going to leave the island. Sawyer says, Kate, we've been through this. And Kate says, you don't understand what it's like to lose a child. If I go back to nothing. He's here. I know it. A mother knows it. Locke says, I wish you were going with us, Kate. And she says, I need to find my son. Sawyer says, how about you, Hugo? Have you seen enough of this? You wanted to stay before we left Armaville. Are you ready to go now? And Hurley simply just says, yeah. As they go to the sub, Sawyer whispers to Hurley, don't worry. We aren't taking Locke with us. Hurley says, we're not? Sawyer said, I don't trust him one bit. Once we get on the sub, I'll figure out the rest. Back in the boom world, Jack is listening to a sleeping Locke say, push the button, and I wish you had believed me. Claire leaves Aaron in the hospital daycare when Claire stops by for a visit with Jack. Claire doesn't tell Jack that she never met Christian in the boom world. Claire also doesn't say she was on Oceanic Flight 815. When Jack says that Christian drank himself to death 3 years ago, Claire says it could have been her fault. Claire explains, I was going to give up my son for adoption, but then our dad showed up out of nowhere and stopped me from signing the papers saying he would stop my mom's medical care. Jack gets concerned and starts to say, did your mom Claire interrupts, no, she's fine actually. His payment still came through. Calloway said that Christian had it set up that her payment was still funded as long as I was still alive. Jack tells Claire it's not her fault. Then the rest of the scene plays out the exact same way it does on the show. She shows him the music box, and then Jack offers to let Claire stay with him instead of a motel, because they are family. Meanwhile, back on the island, Sawyer and Locke go into the sub first. Sawyer takes it over, and Locke holds the guns on the captain. Sawyer comes out of the sub, and Kate and Hurley approach it. Hurley goes in the sub, and Locke gives Hurley the gun. Then Locke exits the sub as Kate approaches the sub. Locke says he wants to make sure everyone is on board and hands Sawyer his backpack, which Sawyer puts on without thinking. Then Locke looks at Kate and calls out to her. Kate looks back and Locke says with his head looking down, I'll see you on the sub. Kate looks confused. She's like, why are you saying that? Then Whitmore's people show up and shoot Kate in the shoulder. Locke yells out, Mom! And then turns and starts shooting at Whitmore's people. Sawyer carries Kate onto the sub. Locke looks back and yells, James! But Sawyer closes the door to the sub and tells Kate that Locke isn't coming with us, and the sub dives. While the sub is diving, Sawyer opens his backpack to look for anything to help Kate, and then sees the bomb with the C4. Now, in the actual show, it's Jack that puts everything together and figures it out. But in my version, Kate's going to be the one, even though she's shot and everything, Kate's going to be the one who puts it all together. She says, he told us what he was doing. He got us all in a confined small space so he could kill us one by one. Sawyer says, that makes no sense. He could have killed us a dozen times by now. Kate says, maybe it had to be this way. Locke says he couldn't leave the island unless we were all together. Maybe this is what he really meant. That we had to die together so he could live alone. Then Kate suddenly has a flash in her mind. And she remembers Jack saying, if we can't all live together, we're going to die alone. The speech he made in the White Rabbit episode. And then Kate starts like grasping the side of her head and she's like, what the hell is that? When Sawyer sees this happen, Sawyer thinks that the bullet is making Kate delusional. So he says out loud, I gotta stop that bomb. Hurley tried to tell Sawyer not to touch the bomb because Richard couldn't kill himself. Hurley says, if we don't touch it, I don't think it's gonna go off, dude. Sawyer ignores him and tries to pull the wires apart, and the bomb ticks down. Sawyer then runs the bomb to the other side of the sub, and then runs back. The bomb goes off on the other side of the sub, and Sawyer does not die. He's able to make it back to the other side of the sub without the explosion killing him. Even though Sawyer doesn't die by the blast, he's still pretty rattled, so he asks Hurley to help Kate escape from the sub. So Kate and Hurley swim out together, and then Sawyer follows behind them. So all three are able to make it out of the sub without dying, and they all swim out on their own. So in my version, Sawyer's never knocked unconscious. So back in the Boom world, now remember, this is the scene where Jin and Sun die, and Saeed. They all die in the actual show. But in my version, they are all in the Boom world, so none of them die in the sub. And remember, Jin and Sun have nothing to do with the hospital, so we're not going to see Jin in the hospital, and we're not going to see Locke mentioning Helen because they're not together. So in the Boom world, the scene after the sub explosion, we're going to see Jack confront John at the hospital when he says that the police told him that his father tried to kill him. Jack says he doesn't understand why that would make him not want to get fixed. And Locke said that he wouldn't understand. Jack said, "Try me." And Jack suggests, "Are you afraid he will come back and hurt you if you're fixed?" And Locke says, "No. If you fix me, then you take away the only thing my father ever gave me." Jack looks confused. Locke continues, 3 years ago, when we met, I was in Australia to go on a walkabout when I couldn't walk because I couldn't face what he did to me. But then I realized what really bothered me was that he left me again. But this time, he made his mark. And because of that, he's always with me. Jack says to John, "When we met 3 years ago, you told me that my father was gone, and that was difficult to hear, but I knew you were right." "Your father is gone too, Mr. Locke." Locke says, "No, he's not." Jack says, yes, he is. "And you can punish yourself as much as you want, but that's never going to bring him back. What happened, happened, and you can let go." Locke says, "What makes you think letting go is so easy?" Jack says, "It's not. And I have a hard time doing it myself, so I was hoping you would go first." Locke laughs and says, "Goodbye, Dr. Shepard," and he leaves. Jack says, "I can't help you, John. I wish you believed me." So then we go back to the island. Now, remember, in the original show, Saeed, Jin, and Sun died. So that's the emotional driver of the scene. But in my version, they don't die. But a lot of people we have met have died. So Amelia dies, Aldo dies, Barb dies, Zach and Emma die. So that's going to be the emotional driver of this scene. Coupled with the fact that it was Hurley's idea to go to the barracks. So Hurley blames himself for everything that just happened. He obviously already knew that everybody died at the barracks, but after the sub incident, that's when Hurley's able to take it in. He has his breakdown there. The emotional scene of the sub sinking with Hurley, Kate, and Sawyer on the beach goes back and forth with Ben, Richard, and Lee getting to the barracks and seeing that Barb, Amelia, and the kids were killed by the monster. Lee is the emotional driver here, devastated that his wife is gone. Richard is also upset to see the kids were killed as well as the rest of the others. Hurley is crying his eyes out because he feels his bad luck did it again. He told everyone he needed to talk to Locke, and now they are all dead. Ben, however, is the only one that is very unemotional about the entire thing. Then we cut back to Hydra Island, and we see Locke looking out at the ocean after the sub sank. And Locke says out loud to himself, "Maybe Ben will do it." And we see the Lost logo. Then we go on to episode 14, what's called Nothing's Gonna Change My World, which is a Jacob-centric episode. This episode is, we're finally going to get Jacob's backstory, and we're also going to learn about another character we have seen only a couple times, and that's Richard Malkin, the psychic. A big Richard Malkin episode here, as well as Jacob. This is Jacob's backstory. And it starts out in the year 2207 on Earth 1. There's an opening narrator, who we find out later is a professor, saying the following. At the formation on every universe, there is light and dark matter. Unfortunately, only 5% of most universes is light visible matter. The dark matter forms the galaxies. Dark energy produces our energy. Most planets don't have life due to the atmosphere or the temperature, but the few that do, that planet is a feeding ground for dark matter creatures that we call Cerberuses. On the planets without a magnetic field, there's no life, but the Cerberus can't form. But on planets like Earth, dark matter is drawn to it like a moth to the flame, and it will eventually break in and go after most life that have a certain electrical production in their body, which is why you are here at the EMF Force Academy. You have all been tested, and it has been determined that your immediate generation will be immune to the Cerberus attacks. I'm sorry you give it a sour taste. Soon you will be deployed to your universe, where you will not only be the savior of that universe, but you also may have the opportunity to become a savior yourselves, which is why we have this class. Welcome to Theology and Ethics, where over the next 10 weeks you will learn... Just then, a system failure alarm goes off, and we enter a large oval room with a ceiling full of Earths and status reports. A voice says that there's a report on Earth 108. They see that Earth 108 is gone. Someone else says, rewind to the point of system failure. It rewinds to 2008, and we see two Earths that look like a Venn diagram that splits apart and distinguishes over the period of 200 years. They rewind to 1977 and see an Earth split into two different Earths, two different universes. The alarm goes off, and on the board it says, first recorded failure. We zoom out of the building and into space and see that this Earth is made up of one large continent with several islands moving all around. This is the island's home universe. We see a classroom full of characters that we have met: Isaac, Peter, Elijah, Rebecca, and Abraham. Then there are 20 other students and Jacob and another young man we haven't met. They talk about being excited about being asked to fix this problem. They introduce themselves to each other. I'm Jacob Ray Shepard. Hi, I'm Malkin, Richard Malkin. And a younger Richard Malkin here is played by Jason Ritter. Malkin asks, do you go by Jacob Ray or is there a shorter version? And Jacob says, my friends call me Jacob. My family ironically calls me Ray. So this implies that Jack has always known that his grandfather's name was Jacob Ray, but they know that they call him Ray because that's their grandfather. So that's kind of what that's implying there. The professor says that based on the testing, Malkin was chosen to fix the problem. We see him and 6 of the students go out to the beach, and an island moves over to the beach. They walk onto the island, and the island drifts off into the middle of the ocean and disappears. Later on, we see Jacob attending another class on the islands. This professor says, like certain dogs or dolphins or raptors or primates, islands have a similar intelligence. The island's individual electromagnetic fields are essentially the island's brain. And that's why we call the control room of the island the heart. Because without the heart, the brain shuts down. And it can't shut down for very long, or else, like all living things, it will die. But the question is, what is really long? How long can a heart stop beating and a creature stay alive? So a student asks if the island is alive or not. The professor answers, well, that comes with an interesting question. It has a heart and a mind, but no circulatory system or digestive system. But it also moves around at will and allows us to put in our equipment without harming us, and can communicate with our subconscious. And as we have seen, they can also reproduce. So that is a question I cannot answer. But I guess the best way to ask it is, what else has a consciousness that is not considered alive? Just then, another system failure alarm goes off, and a much older Richard Malkin appears to the rest of the group. And this is the same Malkin that we know this whole time. So essentially what happened here is that Malkin and his team went to Earth 108 and they once again failed to save it. There's a meeting with 10 students in Malkin. It is a debriefing. Malkin has spent over 7,000 years on Earth and has come to love the people. In his report, Malkin says he tried to get them to reform the universe, but they were more concerned about getting off the island, so they traveled to the Boom universe, where there was no island, and eventually a Cerberus got into the atmosphere in one universe, and the one universe was destroyed, followed by a second via a rip between the two. The director of the meeting says, "We have lost 2 islands and 20 people trying to save this one universe. So they are going to consider it lost." And that's why the show is called Lost. Yay! Jacob asks to be sent for a 3rd time. He says, with Malkin's report and the data from the first report, they can learn from mistakes and try again with a 3rd island. Malkin points out, the others don't have to be lost. If we send another team, we can bring those folks back, and the 2 islands. The director says no. We can't bring back the others because it may cause a similar rip that has already happened if we mess with the timeline. Malkin says, whether it rips the universe earlier or not, it will be destroyed either way, so we can't break what is already broken. Plus, they have an opportunity to save 2 islands and 20 people. The director says, you're talking about wiping out 7,000 years of history. And Malkin says, yes, to save billions of years of future history. Because they determined that they do not know what will happen if a 3rd island warns off the other islands, they decide to try it and see what happens. Malkin says, we had 2 islands there during my deployment. They weren't aware of us and we weren't aware of them. But perhaps that was a mistake. Having that original island there may have made it impossible for us to do our work. And 3 islands on one planet, not a good idea. It's a better idea to only have 1. With that, a final deployment was ordered and Jacob was asked to lead it. He asks Peter, Elijah, Isaac, Rebecca, Abraham, and Malkin to be the guardians of the other electromagnetic pockets. An emotional Malkin agrees. Malkin also points out that if this works, a younger Malkin will have never been sent to the 108 universe to live out his life to begin with. So Earth 108 will be the only home that he has left. Malkin also says, I've been there for 7,000 years. Earth 108 is my home, even if I have to live my life all over again. So what I'm basically saying here is this is how Richard Malkin became a psychic. He lived on Earth for 7,000 years. He goes back and lives another 7,000 years. Therefore, that's how he knows the future, because he's lived the same life twice. Jacob and his team board the island that we know, and they go to the heart of the island. The heart of the island is way more technologically designed. It is still natural, but it has lots of technology. It looks more like a control room and less like a natural spring. They all drink the water, which will allow them to live as long as they want. Jacob reminds his team that if they ever want to age regularly, just drink the water again. On the technology, they input 5000 BC for their point, and input the codes to stay clear of any other islands already there. They say, once we capture the Cerberus monster, hopefully the other islands will understand what we did and go home. A map pops up and Hydra Island is flashing. So at this time period, the island can communicate with both dreams and the technology. At least at this time period where all the machines in the heart of the island were brand new. Jacob smiles and says, no, not that island. The one's already there. So what is being implied here is that Hydra Island is actually the offspring of the main island. Peter jokes and says, what if there's already an island when we get there? Implying that a future 4th trip was made. And Jacob says, well then this will be one short trip. But they barely let us do this one. So don't take this lightly, everyone. We are probably this universe's last hope. So Jacob and his team form hands and they say, okay, just think of Earth 108 and we will soon be there. Through their thoughts, the island and the team disappear and move to our Earth, Earth 108, and 5000 BC to try to save the universe again. So in 5000 BC and Earth 108, aka our universe, That is when the smoke monster first appears into the atmosphere. The island appears where the smoke monster was and traps it inside. The smoke monster goes immediately to the heart of the island where it does not attack the people, because remember, they were all chosen because the smoke monster will not attack them. But the cork is opened and it sucks the monster into the chamber below the cork, and then it seals it shut. At this time period, it's not a rock. It's a metallic cork that can be opened and shut by the technology. So Jacob tests his fellow classmates. So who can tell me why we just can't leave and go home now? Peter answers. The chamber below is a doorway to a barren universe with no life. The smoke monster will multiply there and feed there, so if the seal is ever broken, it'll destroy whatever universes it's on. Jacob says correct. Too many universes were lost this way at the beginning. When we first went to another universe and captured the monsters, we would leave the island in that universe, and us people would go back to Earth 1, only to find that we created a feeding ground for the Cerberuses. The islands need human beings to oversee it. So if we tried to go back, the Cerberus monsters would not only destroy their own space, but time as well. So those universes could not be saved. Luckily, only one of those Cerberuses ever escaped on Earth 1, but it took the lives of 10 islands before they stopped it from advancing. So yes, the island and us are here to stay. So then we go to 3500 BC. The island is overrun by Egyptians, and Jacob has lost control. The Egyptians broke the metallic cork and found another rock to take its place instead. The smoke monster was released during this time. Jacob, defeated, found a hallway that took Jacob into a chamber that took him directly to Los Angeles, or at least the area that was in Los Angeles in 3500 BC, which was a native populated West Coast. And there he finds Malkin. Malkin laughs and says, "The Egyptians, right?" Jacob explained that when they got into the heart of the island and got control of everything, he lost control of the island. Malkin advised patience and said that he would eventually get the island back. Jacob said he was okay traveling the world for a time. He could wait. Malkin warned Jacob that it would take a little longer to get back to the island, because the island only has direct routes to the electromagnetic pockets, but the other pockets are more random. Malkin said that since the smoke monster was released, they won't try to mess with the heart again for a while. He said under his watch, the seal was open for thousands of years without a cork, and no other smoke monsters came out, so they were safe for the time being. So then we go to the 1950s. Jacob is with Christian on the island. Jacob says, "Focus, son. Think about the place I told you about." Christian says, "I can't think about a place I haven't seen before." Jacob said that he could, and again said, "Think of a Hollywood sign, but as a mountain." Christian squinted and opened his eyes, and Christian was at the Hollywood sign, but it was located on a tall mountain. Jacob says, "Good job, you did it. You crossed universes. Not our universe, but one similar to Earth 108, except Hollywood is in the Rockies here for some reason." Christian asks why he had to learn this. Jacob says, "So you will be able to go home when your job is complete." Jacob closes his eyes, and he and Christian are back on the island on Earth 108. Christian tells Jacob that he already is home. So then we cut to the 1980s. We cut to another baseball game with Ray, Christian, and Jack. When Jack leaves, probably to go get another hot dog, Ray tells Christian, "So, you met Carol." Christian doesn't want to talk about it. Ray reveals that Carol is pregnant. Ray doesn't allow Christian to react. He just tells him, "Christian, someday your daughter will have a son. It will be your job to separate the two. My plan may not work if she raises her own child." Christian was surprised, but before he could question anything, Ray says, "The island will show you why, someday." Christian will do the opposite of this. So in the 1990s, Ray is in the statue doing a thread when Malkin comes to the island. Malkin comes into the statue. Ray is pleased to see Malkin, but Malkin is not pleased to see Ray. Malkin says, "What do you think you're doing? Mating with them? Starting families? And what you're trying to do with your granddaughter? You told me once that Richard couldn't interfere with what a future version of Richard was doing with John Locke. And now I realize that's because he's not John Locke. This is your job, and yours alone. Ray says, "My son was born several years ago. I don't understand why you're objecting to this now. You can't tell me you haven't known this for a while. Alas, my son or grandchildren don't appear up to the task, so it'll be up to my great-grandchild to get the job done." Despite Richard's poor attempts to recruit him, past and future. Can't seem to get the job done. "But I do not understand how you knew what I was up to. My great-grandson has not been born yet. Did you go that far into the future?" Malkin explained that he's been here before, and he knows the timeline so well he can easily spot the differences. Ray says, "The only ones that are able to take over is my family. They have to be from this universe and our universe. That's the key." Basically, Jacob believes that the other two groups tried to save the universe in other ways, perhaps making the people split between universes remember their former lives, but it didn't work. Jacob believes that only his offspring, with lineage to both the 108 universe and the island universe, Earth 1, can achieve this. Malkin and the other group did not try this themselves. Malkin exclaims, "Do you realize how dangerous this is?" Malkin explains, "Cerberuses can't influence our immediate offspring, but our descendants could be influenced by Cerberuses 2 or 3 generations from now, and they will have knowledge of our universe and come after us too. Especially, your great-grandson will have the darkest path of all. He will be 7/8 from this universe and only 1/8 from ours. And that's just enough to be both corruptible and knowledgeable." Jacob now tells Malkin to be patient, and suggests that maybe the island has shown him something he didn't know. Malkin says, "I'm done. Find someone else to guard the LA pocket." Malkin says, "I'm moving to Australia, in the hopes of stopping your granddaughter from doing the wrong thing." This scene explains why Malkin is not guarding the lamppost pocket, but Eloise is guarding the lamppost pocket. Richard Malkin ironically marries somebody and has a daughter of his own, even though he tells Jacob not to do this at the time. But at this point, Richard Malkin considers himself retired after 14,000 years, with the exception of trying to influence Claire. But he has some tragedy in August of 2004. We are in the Australian outback at 6:16 p.m., and we see Isaac and Malkin carry his daughter Charlotte to the portal room. I realize that here's another character named Charlotte. Malkin himself is named Richard. I'm not a fan of using either Richard or Charlotte here for first names, but those were the names on the actual show, so I really don't want to change the names, so we're going to stick with them. This is a coordinated effort to save Charlotte's life with Isaac, Malkin, Jacob, Mikhail, and Eloise. Malkin is very distraught. Isaac gets on the phone with Eloise, who says she has determined the location of the island, and if they activate the portal at 6:23 Australian time, she says by her calculations, activating the portal will have a 78% chance to send Charlotte to the island with no time variances. Malkin is concerned about waiting and wants to activate the portal now, but Isaac says that could send her months into the past or future and disrupt time as we know it. She just needs to wait a few minutes. Jacob calls Malkin from the flame station. Malkin thanks Jacob for his help, despite their differences in recent years. At 6:23, Isaac activates the portal and Charlotte disappears. Malkin asks if Jacob has her, and Jacob says she is not on the island. Malkin then believes she may have crossed universes during transport. He had been teaching her how to do this. Malkin closes his eyes and disappears into the multiverse, trying to find Charlotte. We see Charlotte and Malkin wake up in a church, with Yemi, Echo's brother, asking her if she was alright. She says that she was alright. Last thing she remembered was she was swimming. Yemi says that he is waiting to see his brother at confession. Charlotte asks if his brother was the priest or the penitent, and Yemi smiles and says he is the priest, but he is only pretending to be the priest. Yemi says that he cannot stay and he needs to leave, but asks her to deliver a message to his brother after he is done with confession. Charlotte, confused, agrees to deliver the message. Yemi says to tell his brother Echo that even though he knows he's pretending, that he is a good priest, a good man. Once he is done with confession, he will come out and see you. When you see him, tell him I said even though he doesn't have faith in himself, I have faith in him. He will know what that means. Charlotte asks him his name, and he says, my name is Yemi. Charlotte agrees to give Echo the message, and Yemi leaves the church. Just then, Richard Malkin appears and embraces his daughter. Malkin explains that she was dead, but now she's back, and they need to go home now. Charlotte says, okay, right after I talk to the priest. Malkin says, no, we need to leave now. And they both disappear as Echo exits the confessional. When Malkin gets back, Charlotte is not with him. He says he lost her again and is about to disappear, but Isaac stops him and says, she's already back. When she returned from the island, it was about 1 hour before we even brought her here. Malkin asks if she was alright. Isaac tells him that she was still dead, but she will probably come back after the island travel, especially if she woke up in another universe during the transportation. Malkin thanks Isaac, relays his thanks to Eloise, and then thanks Jacob. Jacob says to Malkin, okay, now you're going to do something for me. And Malkin says, anything. Jacob says to Malkin, leave Claire alone. I know you're trying to con her into keeping her baby. That needs to stop. I just saved your daughter's life. The least you can do is leave my granddaughter be. Malkin agrees and Jacob hangs up. Isaac tells Malkin, you better get to Dr. McVeigh's office. He's going to be in for quite a surprise when she wakes up during the autopsy. This is why Malkin's daughter comes back to life and believes she has seen Echo's brother in the question mark episode. Echo's brother was from another universe she was perceiving, and Malkin used the island with Isaac's help to save his daughter after she drowned. But unlike Jacob, Malkin does not want his daughter to be involved with the island. So then we go to September 2004. This is why Christian was in Australia in 2004. He was there to stop Claire from giving up her baby for adoption. Again, the exact opposite of what his father wanted. But the island prevented the pens from working, so he did not have to intervene. Remember, in the Boom world, Christian intervenes to stop the adoption from happening. On Earth 108 Combined Universe, the island interferes to stop the adoption from happening. So Christian didn't have to do anything. But because Christian didn't have to do anything, this is also why Christian went on to an alcoholic bender. He was torn from getting fired, not having a relationship with his daughter, and going against his father's wishes. So that led to the whole thing. In September of 2004, Jacob calls Malkin from the Flame station. Mikhail sets up the conversation between Jacob and Malkin at the Flame. So, just to take a time out here, remember in the Perry Vaughn episode, Mikhail says that Ben is not magnificent, but the magnificent men brought him all here. This hinted that Mikhail may have had a closer relationship with Jacob than the average other, and it's confirmed here. So kind of like Eloise and Juliet and Isabel and Richard, Mikhail has also met Jacob. So Jacob calls Malkin and says that his son has died, and he needs some help getting the Hurarat aviation to bring Christian's body to the island. Malkin asks, why don't you get Christian's body to Isaac like I did with my daughter? But Jacob says there isn't time. He may actually die by the time we get him to Isaac. He's been declared dead for too long. Hell, he may have already died in autopsy. It may be too late. Eloise also said it could take centuries before we get another portal jump with no time variance. The plane will ensure that Christian gets here now. Malkin says he would go to the airport and take care of it. Malkin went to the airport on September 22nd to oversee Christian's transport. But when he gets there, he sees that Jack already has Christian's body on the plane. So Malkin goes to Isaac to be sent back in time a few days. He needs to get to the airport earlier so he has enough time to arrange the transport. While there, at Isaac's faith healing portal, Malkin says to Isaac, too bad we just can't send me back before Christian died so I can save him then. And Isaac reminds Malkin that could cause a paradox that would destroy the universe instantly. and Malkin agrees. Malkin takes the portal to Rome, and then Peter sends Malkin back to Australia, and he arrives back on September 19th to put his real plan into motion. While assuring Christian gets to the island as requested, his real plan is to get Claire on the same plane and switch the Hurarat pilot to the Oceanic pilot. Since Jack already got Christian on the plane, he can't change it. That would cause another paradox. He needs to make it so he can get the pilot on the plane. So from September 19th to September 22nd, there were two different Richard Malkins. The Richard Malkin before Jacob's call was the one who talked to Echo and told him that he was a fraud. And the Richard Malkin after Jacob's call called Claire in the middle of the night and gave her the Oceanic 8:15 tickets. Malkin uses Christian's death as an opportunity to get Claire on the plane so that she couldn't give up Aaron for adoption. As a parent, Malkin believed that if Claire kept Aaron, the danger that Malkin thought would be attached to Aaron wouldn't happen. The irony was that Malkin believed this was possible by sending Aaron to the one place he didn't want him to go at all, the island. So Richard Malkin is responsible for putting Seth Norris on the Oceanic plane and crashing the plane itself. Richard Malkin gave Seth Norris the coordinates of the island based on what they were when his daughter went to the island. But even a month later, the island had moved 1,000 miles from that position, which is the real reason they were 1,000 miles off course. During the flight, Malkin got the updated coordinates from Eloise and caused the Oceanic radio system to go out 6 hours into the flight, hence forcing Norris to redirect the flight to Fiji, knowing that the island's location was between the 6 hours in point and Fiji. So he could calculate that from where they had to turn to the part where Fiji is, the island was right in between those 2 points. Malkin used his Hurarat credentials to give the corrected flight plan into the Oceanic computer system. Now, if you're wondering how does he know how to do all this as a psychic, you also have to remember he is 14,000 years old. He knows how to do stuff. As we know from season 5, Jacob only wanted Christian, not the rest. As we know from this episode, Jacob's long-term plan was for Aaron to take over the island. When Malkin got home that night, Charlotte tells him that she went to the airport to give Echo the message. Malkin at first is upset, but then is okay. He tells her, "I think I just saved a child's life. His mother will be able to take care of him now. And I just saved a man's life, just like we saved your life. And once that man is saved," he's of course referring to Christian here, "he will take over a job that would have bestowed great danger onto a newborn child." So Malkin believed Claire being on the island would force her to raise her own baby, and after Christian died and came back to life on the island, Malkin also figured Christian would do the job now instead of Aaron, because Christian had no life to go back to because the world had declared him dead. So Aaron would be spared from any danger. But in 2005, we see Malkin's reaction to the Oceanic 16 being found, and he calls Isaac. Malkin says that he thinks he was wrong about Jacob's plan. He told Isaac that if the island really wanted Claire and Aaron to be together, it would have done so. Isaac points out that it was stupid to send Claire and Aaron to the one place in the world Jacob lives in the hopes that to thwart Jacob's plan. Not to mention, the monster is there. You were so worried about Cerberus infecting Aaron, you brought Aaron right to its doorstep. That's like giving someone the plague to cure the flu. But Malkin explains that he thought that the island would overrule Jacob. He says he was certain of it when the island prevented Claire from signing the adoption papers. He thought the island would never allow Aaron to be infected, but both the island and Jacob were several steps ahead. And now, he said, "I see the wisdom, and now I want to be a part of that plan. The island must have a plan for Aaron, and it must be being away from its mother. And if you need any help from me, please let me know." So then we go to 2007. Once the Oceanic 16 became famous, he realized that the mysterious people that were briefly on the island in 1977 must have come from the Oceanic plane he sent to the island. He then believes that the universal rip may have been caused by Jack, Kate, Hurley, or Saeed not going back to 1977 when they were supposed to. Malkin tells Eloise that he believes they may be the key of stopping the universal rip if they go back. So in other words, if they go back, it'll stop the rip from even happening. So Ray is in the old folks' home, and Malkin comes to visit him. They are still estranged, but believe in the same thing. Malkin says, "I heard you wanted to see me. What can I do for you, Jacob?" And Ray tells Malkin, "It appears that my grandson is willing to go back to the island, but we still need Austin, Reyes, and Gerard to go back too. Now, I have a plan for Austin and Reyes, but Gerard really seems to be a no-go. So any wisdom you have on that would be greatly appreciated." Malkin says, "You haven't forced him to go back?" Ray says, "Eloise has Linus trying to do that with his resources, but I don't see that endeavor working. You know what happened to Saeed if he never went to the island. I do not. Can we tap into that history?" Malkin says that in the Earth 108 he lived in, Saeed Jarrah lived with his brother and eventually went to jail for murder. But then after he got released from jail, something very unexpected and remarkable happened in his life. And maybe, just maybe, he may go back because of that. I can try to convince him, but I make no promises. So then later on in 2007, we see Ray exit the cab that he and Hurley were in. And then we see where Ray went after that. Ray meets up with Malkin in his hotel room in LA. So we're inside the hotel room here. And Jacob says, "You sent Saeed back to the island, even though you knew it would cause the rip, didn't you?" And Malkin says, "Yes, I knew. I thought at first that the rip was caused by them not going back in time, so I thought we had to send them back at all costs. That's what I told Eloise, until I realized the truth. The rip would have happened the moment they left the island in 2005 if that was the true cause of the rip." Jacob says, "I was telling you the truth before. If Jack, Kate, Saeed, and Hurley didn't return, I don't know what would have happened. I don't think the universe and not even the island could have course corrected them there. So it would have been an even greater disaster than the rip." Malkin says, "I understand it now." And Jacob says, "So what do you understand?" Malkin says, "I knew about Saeed's presence in 1977, that it would lead to the split, but hoped that maybe Saeed could be the bridge that the split universe needed, which is why I told you I could get Saeed to agree to go back to the island. I realize this is the same as my original plan when I was running things with my island, but I agree with you. I think with this group of people, it may actually work this time. If Jarrah and Rutherford are each in a different universe, they can bridge them. I can feel it." Jacob says, "About a year ago, I realized that Jack, Kate, Saeed, and Hurley will cause the split. But the split needs to happen in order to heal the two universes and destroy the Cerberus monster. And Jack and Claire and Aaron could be the bridge too. You'll see. I'm telling you. And I know you tried the same thing on your island. There needs to be a bridge of love. And my descendants will build that bridge between the two universes and bring them back together." And Malkin says, "I hope so." So then we go back to 1977. Juliet hits the bomb 8 times, and Ray is aware of this, realizing the upcoming predicament and wondering if he'll be in the boom world or the bust world. He finds himself in the boom world in 1977, realizing that he was placed in the universe he did not want to be in. Ray is in the statue. He starts to feel the island shake and about to explode. Ray, realizing he didn't have time to get to the portal, says, "Christian, Jack, Claire, it's up to you." And the island explodes, and Jacob dies in the boom world. This proves that Jacob was aware of Claire before she was even born. Then we stay in the boom world and we go 30 years later. We are in LA where 2 workers are talking. One worker says, "I can't believe they let people like us guard this thing." And the other person says, "Yeah, especially what it did to Europe and most of Asia back in the 80s. They enter a room and it's revealed that the smoke monster is alive in the boom world and it has been captured in a small electromagnetic force field by the United States government in Los Angeles. It is also implied that the smoke monster destroyed most of Europe and most of Asia before being stopped in LA. And we see the Lost logo. Alright, episode 15 is What They Died For, which is another various episode that's just going to be, there's no centric character. So this episode will start in the Boom World. Jack and Claire wake up to Aaron putting cereal on the table and saying he made breakfast. And remember, this is a 3-year-old doing it, so it's overall kind of a cute little moment. Oh, look, the little kid put some cereal on the table. That type of thing. Jack's neck is not bleeding and he has no son. Just a reminder. The tickets for the concert were supposed to be for Jack and his parents that his mom bought for them in 2004. They got basically store credit due to Christian's death, and since the concert had come and passed, she got 3 drive shaft tickets instead. Margot, Jack's mom, doesn't want to go to the concert. So Jack invites Claire to the concert, the drive shaft concert, that he already had the tickets to. And she says yes. So the 3 tickets would go to Jack, Claire, and Aaron. While at breakfast, Desmond calls Jack in a disguised voice to tell him that they found Christian's body. So Jack and Claire find out simultaneously that after 3 years, Christian's body has finally been found. Alright, so we're back on that beach in the bust world. It's Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley right after the sub sank. Hurley says, "We gotta go talk to Christian." I was hoping Locke would be reasoned with, but clearly not, so that didn't work. All I did was get more people killed. Again, just like Michael said. Kate says, "Michael?" Hurley says, "Yeah, Michael. Well, not our Michael, a different one." Sawyer says, "Christian, huh?" And Hurley says, "Yeah, he knows stuff. He knows how to get off the island." So, the significance of that little exchange between Sawyer and Hurley there is that Sawyer is going to have like a look of recognition in his face. The second Hurley says Christian, Sawyer starts to believe that this might be the same guy that he met at the bar before coming to the island. Kate reminds everyone that all she wants to do is find Aaron. And Hurley says that maybe Christian will help her there too. Hurley says he last saw Christian not too far from the barracks, so they should start there. On the way to find Christian, Sawyer asks Kate how her shoulder is doing, but Kate says there's not much else they can do about it. Sawyer says, "No, that's not what's bothering you. What is it?" Kate says, "Locke shouted out what sounded like Mom before I was shot. What was that about?" "I don't know," said Sawyer. "Maybe he flashed back to some weird foster care moment. All I know is he proved he's not worth our time the moment he put that bomb in my pack." So as they continue walking on, Kate and Hurley are walking together. Kate asks Hurley what he was expecting to reason out of Locke. Hurley said that despite Locke's selfishness and desires to either be on the island or off the island or push the button or open the hatch, there's always been, I don't know, good in him somehow. I was hoping he would offer us safe passage, for those who want it. He had said he wanted to get everyone off the island safely, and when he said that, I believed him. Kate said, "Well, he clearly didn't because he tried to kill us." Hurley says, "Well, maybe not us, but the others. I think he did want to help them. Remember the night we opened the hatch?" And Kate said, "What about it?" Hurley says, "You must have saw something in him that night to go and help him open the hatch." Kate says, "I was trying to make it up to everyone else. They all knew I was wanted for murder. I needed to prove I was willing to help the group." Hurley says, "But didn't Locke give you the knife?" And Kate says that he did. And then Hurley also says, "Didn't he also give you a knife when no one else wanted to give you a weapon?" And Kate said that he did. Hurley says, "See, there is still good in him. I think there's a way to get to that, Locke." So, in the actual show around this point in the episode, there was a scene where Desmond beats up Ben in the Boom World, but that scene is completely removed because Ben is not in the Boom World. He's in the Bust World. So, in the Bust World, Lee, Richard, and Ben are in the barracks. They have gone into the houses and covered up the bodies with white sheets. to prepare the same burial at sea that they did for Colleen in Season 3. They don't mention the plane, they only talk about the donkey wheel. Richard promises to come back and do proper burials after the ordeal is concluded. So in other words, they're just covering up all the bodies with white sheets, and they're going to do the burials later, like after they get done blowing up the Orchid. They see a grave, and Richard mentions to Ben that he buried Alex after he left. When they go to Ben's house to get the C4, Widmore and Zoe arrive at the house. Richard tells Widmore their plan to blow up the Orchid, to Ben's dismay. Charles tells Ben that he's already gone to the Orchid and lined it with C4, so he's already 3 steps ahead of him. Then we see a quick flashback of the moment Locke was at the Orchid, and he removes the C4 from the Orchid and rigs it to put it in Sawyer's backpack, or the backpack that he gave Sawyer. When Charles tells Ben that Jacob visited him and showed him the error of his ways, remember there's no Jacob in the Bust world, just the myth, we see a voiceover flashback that shows that Charles actually spoke to Christian, who told him how to come to the island. Also remember, Charles's true purpose was to try to save the universe by sending Penny to the other universe and using their love to heal it. He was motivated by scientific papers of his son Daniel. So basically, we have the exact same scene here as the actual show, where Charles says that Jacob visited him. We just have to remember that Jacob isn't there, so it's Christian that actually visited him, not Jacob. Alright, so we're going to go to the Boom World now. In the Boom World, the lawyer Calloway brings Desmond down to the police station for a self-surrender and tells Officer Walton that he's the suspect, and he gets locked up with Sayid and Cassidy. So you remember Cassidy, right? The mother of Sawyer's baby. She is in this episode, and she is in jail. More than likely for a con job. We never find out why she's in jail. But remember, in the actual show, Kate was in jail. But remember, Kate's not in the Boom World, so there's no Kate in jail. So back to the Bust World. Sawyer and Hurley are walking together at this point. And Sawyer says to Hurley, "You didn't kill them. I did. I tried to stop that bomb and it made it worse." And Kate said, "Nobody killed anyone. It was Locke and the smoke monster." And then Christian comes out of nowhere and says, "That's right." And then there's a commercial break. After the commercial break, at that point it's dark, so they're all sitting by a fire. And the 4 people that are sitting by the fire are Kate, Sawyer, Hurley, and Christian. Christian says he doesn't know where to start, but he needs to tell them everything in the hope that they can succeed where others have failed. Sawyer says to him, "You're the guy from the bar. What the hell is this?" Christian says, "At that time, I only knew about the island by what I was taught by my father. But I didn't want that life, so I became a doctor. Speaking of, honey, let me sew that up for you." Christian's referring to Kate at this point, because remember, Kate still has a bullet wound and blood coming out. So while Christian talks, Christian sews up Kate's bullet wound. Christian says, "This is going to be hard to believe, but I ask for the sake of everything that you try. My father is from a parallel Earth. Earth 1 to be exact." Sawyer says, "Yeah, and I'm from Rigel 7. Christian continues, "My father went to the EMF Force Academy, the Electromagnetic Field Force Academy, which involves taking islands like this one to parallel worlds and trapping the smoke monster that we called Cerberus in there so it won't destroy the universe. Left unchecked, it will devour most people alive and will spread eventually, ripping out the universe itself. With a few exceptions, most worlds are saved from this, except for a few that you two got to witness." Kate and Hurley look confused. Christian continues, "The Buffalo, New York, overrun by smoke monsters that you visited? That wasn't a dream. That was a parallel Earth that you went to." Hurley asks, "From the Roman portal room?" "No," says Christian. "The EM pockets only go to different places and times on this planet. A person you don't remember was traveling with you, and he brought you to that parallel universe without realizing it. That same man also brought you to the island's home universe as well. When you were coming back, you weren't aware of it, but you were also time traveling, and eventually you got to the 70s. That's how we knew you were coming back. We all stay in contact and report on things that are to come. That's how..." Christian stops and says, "Wait, let's stay in order." So before I move on, remember in the Black Rock episode in Season 5 when they're suddenly in Buffalo, New York, and then they're suddenly seeing islands like drifting around. That's basically what happened. What we're saying here very specifically is that Jack transported Kate, Saeed, and Hurley without their knowledge to these two parallel worlds without trying. Just like Malkin was able to travel through parallel worlds, just like Jacob and his team was able to travel through parallel worlds. That's basically what we're saying here. Alright, so back to the story. My father, Ray, known to others as Jacob, has worked universe-saving jobs before. On Earths 4, Earth 8, Earth 15, Earth 16, Earth 23, and Earth 42. He saved all 6 of those Earths. Hurley whispers to himself, so that's what the numbers are. Christian continues, and he often tried to create the same experiences on those worlds, because once you save one world, it gets easier to run the same play. But your Earth, Earth 108, was different. 2 different islands had already failed, so Jacob was sent on his 7th mission and the final attempt to save this universe. Hurley says, wait, how can Jacob do all this at the same time? He can't be in 7 places at once. Christian said, he can't. He always came home and found replacements to take over his job on the other 6 universes. No doubt he wanted the same here, and that's why I was born. I was his replacement. So Jacob had 2 missions to save the universe and find a replacement. Jacob tried to find that replacement with me, but failed because I didn't want the job. I wanted to be a doctor. Save fewer lives, it seems. But we also knew that at some point this universe was going to split into 2. Many tried to undo it. We saw variables in the timeline that we thought would lead to it and tried to put them out. But there are some universal constants that cannot be undone. At some point, someone would split the universe, so through the lighthouse that allows us to see into alternate Earths, Jacob tried to find the perfect people to put the universe together after it split. Jacob combined theories of physics and mind, and tried to do this with the Egyptians, the Romans, etc., and each time failed. But each time there was progress. Around the time of your plane crash, he was working on bringing another group of people to the island. But when I died in Sydney, his plans changed. He arranged for the aviation company that the island owns to fly my body to this island. But one of our associates from the island's home universe, Richard Malkin, put my body onto an oceanic airline jet, and that's how you all ended up on this island. But the island works in mysterious ways. Unknown to Jacob until I arrived, he also brought back Jack and Claire to this island, and his great-grandson in a way, which may have been confusing to the island at the time. And as your group began to make a life here, Jacob began to believe that perhaps the group already here was the key to everything. Once he realized this, he also realized that you were the ones that were in the 1977 incident, and he began to formulate his new plan to save our universe. Kate says, wait, who are Jack and Claire? Christian says, well, this may finally answer a huge question. Kate, who is Aaron's birth mother? Kate thought about that, but then seemed to be getting a huge headache, like to a point where it looked like she was about to have a seizure. So Christian says, okay, Kate, it's okay, don't think about it. Christian continues, Jack is the man you don't remember. The man who brought you to the island universe and the universe overrun by smoke monsters. He is also my son. Claire? Well, we'll get to Claire. Back to what I was saying about my arrival on the island. This is when Jacob brought me back. I was dead, but like Locke, I was brought back to life, because he and I were only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead. Kind of like Wesley in The Princess Bride before Miracle Max brought him back. Have you ever seen that movie? Anyways, we still had some electricity in our bodies, so when we got to the island, that was enough to bring us back all the way. And because of this, I'm aware of the universe there once was. And now I'm in tune with the island just like Locke is. But Locke is also in tune with the smoke monster, which makes him very, very dangerous. So Locke, Richard, and I are the only ones who are aware of the universe before the rip, because we are the only ones who were brought back to life by the island. Well, actually there's one other person. There's also a woman named Charlotte who is aware of both universes too. But she lives in Australia, and her father has shielded her from this island. So to answer your question, Kate, Claire is in the other universe and is the birth mother to Aaron. So if you want Aaron back, the only way is to combine the two universes. But Kate says, no, that can't be it. I was told Aaron was on this island. Christian says, he is. Kate says, then where is he? Christian says, you were just with him. Locke is Aaron. So immediately all three of them start questioning Christian at the same time, like overlapping questions. And Christian explains that in the universe they don't remember, Widmore kidnapped Aaron and took him back to the 1960s and killed Locke, and since Locke was in the foster care system, no one noticed this difference, except for Locke's birth mother, which drove her a little insane. Every moment that you have experienced with Locke, good or bad, he has been adult Aaron Littleton this entire time. Kate says, I don't believe you. Hurley says, well, wait a minute. We've traveled through time and other universes apparently, and there's a monster made of smoke, so I don't think it's impossible. Christian says, if you don't want to believe that Locke is Aaron, then believe the second option. That Locke is there in the Boom world, and your love for him can save both his world and this one. Hurley says, the power of love saves us? Christian says, yes, Hugo. Love is a science with an unbalanced equation. When I got back here, Jacob began to watch you passengers and realized that the love possibilities from your group could be enough to reestablish the whole thing. Sawyer says, don't listen to him. Your name was crossed off in the cave Locke showed me with the diagrams. Christian explained, once you became a mom, your name was crossed off. You had your love. But when you lost him, Jacob couldn't erase what he had already crossed off. I told Widmore how to come back to the island as a backup plan, in the hopes that he could use his daughter to reform the universes. But apparently that hasn't worked. Furthermore, I gave him the information to keep Sawyer and Hurley safe, but I neglected your name because at the time you still had Aaron. So Kate, I apologize for any issues that has caused for you. Okay, you are all sewed up. So then Christian says to the group, okay, it's decision time. I wanted to leave this island more than anything, but I just told you why you need to save it. But like my father, I'm giving you the choice. Kate, there's a portal on Hydra Island created by Widmore that leads to the Boom world where Aaron is. Remember though, the Aaron you physically met is already here. He is Locke. You can see him. James, there's a room underneath your statue that will lead you to the same portals you guys know about already, that will take you directly to LA. Go down the hallway, it's the first chamber on the right. It will probably be a few months in the past or future, but you won't keep time traveling like you did before, I promise. Hugo, at the beach where you lived, the membrane between the two universes are at its weakest. There you may find your loved ones from the other side. Kate, James, your loved ones will be there. You just haven't met them yet. What will it be? Sawyer quickly says, I'm going to LA. Kate says, Locke is not my son. I'm going to where he is. Hurley says, I'm with you, dude. And Hurley says this to Christian. Sawyer is surprised by this. Sawyer says, Hugo, didn't you just want to leave all this behind? And Hurley says, that was before the sub sank and everyone died. Perhaps I need to just do what I'm told. And Christian says, I'm not telling you what to do, Hugo. I'm just telling you it needs to be done. And Hurley says he knows. So since Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley are all going in three different directions, they all give each other a pretty serious goodbye, and they part ways. As Hurley and Christian walk towards the beach, Hurley tells Christian, oh, by the way, I completed the further study. I told everyone that Jacob said to go talk to Locke, clearly a lie, and look what happened. Everyone except me died. Those numbers are cursed, man, and the radio tower thingy did not fix it. Christian says to Hurley, Hugo, it's not the numbers. Look at the facts. Kate and Sawyer didn't die. Did you force any of them to listen to you? No. Are you the smoke monster? No. It's not as black and white as you think, Hugo. I can promise you that there are so many factors you aren't considering. I believe in you, Hugo. I really do. I can tell you are one of a kind, and the island does too. That's why you could see all the people behind the whispers, while Ben could only see his mother, and Locke could only hear. Because you care so much. You can't spend your life afraid to do the right thing because of how it might impact others. You need to rely on others and yourself to make the best out of every situation. Make sense? Hurley sarcastically says, yeah, makes sense. Saving the universe with the power of love makes total sense. And Christian laughs. Meanwhile, back at the barracks, Locke uses the Zodiac to get to the barracks. Widmore suggests they all need to hide because Locke could bring the smoke monster to them. Lee says that he's going to flee into the woods and encourages them to do the same. Ben asks for the walkies, and Zoe and Widmore give Ben the walkies. But this time, Ben quotes the rules that says, leaders do what are asked of other leaders. Ben gives his walkie to Lee, who is still devastated, and says that as mad as he is at Ben for the loss of his son, the monster is worse, and he will help him if he can. So when Locke arrives at the barracks, both Richard and Ben go outside to wait the inevitable. Richard also thinks that Locke might want to talk to him because he wanted to talk to him before, so that's why they both go outside. In this version, Locke goes up to Ben. He asks him to kill Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley. Richard says no, even though he wasn't even asked at all. Ben also says no. Locke then asks whose boat was at the dock, and Ben said it was Charles and his lady's friend's boat. Locke asks where they are, and Ben says they are hiding in my closet. And then Richard gives Ben the same look of annoyance that Ben had given Richard before when they were in the house. So Locke goes inside and finds Widmore and Zoe and orders them outside. Locke asks Widmore to kill Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley, and he refuses. And Locke asks Zoe the same question. She refuses. And then the smoke monster comes out and kills Zoe, but spares the other three. Then Locke walks up to Richard and takes Richard's compass, making it the object that belongs to him. So basically when Locke had passed the 6 things test, the object that Locke had said was his was that exact compass. Richard says, years ago Jacob said that my compass belonged to John. That's why it was a part of the 6 things test. And Locke says, well, now the prophecy has been fulfilled. And Locke says that somewhat sarcastically. Then Locke looks at Ben, Widmore, and Richard and says, well, can't think of a better torture of you two being here together and not being able to kill each other. I'll leave you to it. Suddenly, Ben says yes, and then quotes the rules. Leaders do what are asked of other leaders. So Ben leaves with Locke, and Richard and Widmore remain stunned. But before Ben gets too far, he turns, takes his gun, and he unloads bullets into Widmore. But Widmore does not get hit, because the island saved Widmore from being hit because of the rule that they can't hurt each other. Locke smiles at the attempt. Ben turns, and as they walk away, Ben says, it was worth a shot. Locke says, you know, you could change the rules and kill him, just like he did to kill Alex. But Ben says, I don't believe in changing the rules. Besides, if I change that rule, what's to stop other leaders from killing me? And Locke says, fair point. So back in the Boom world, Arzt is down to the police station to do a police lineup and points out Desmond in the lineup. And then there's a brief moment where Desmond comes out and Arzt is in the hallway, and Arzt says, why'd you do it, tough guy? And Desmond says that he was trying to help Locke let go. So then when Arzt goes back to the school and Arzt and Locke are in the teacher's lounge together, Arzt tells Locke that story at the school. And that's what prompts Locke to visit Jack in the hospital. So when Jack and Locke are in the hospital in the Boom world, Locke says that his father looks like him, not his son, because remember, Jack has no son. And that's in the picture that he looks at. Locke doesn't mention seeing Desmond a second time, but lists all the other chance encounters. And when he does this, so the chance encounters of like being told to let go and things like that. And Jack asks if he's accusing him of working with Desmond to like hit him with the car and everything. But John says, no. But what if all of this, maybe this is happening for a reason. Maybe you're supposed to fix me. And Jack says, Mr. Locke, I want to fix you, but I think you're mistaking coincidence for fate. And then Locke says, you can call it whatever you want, but here I am. And I think I'm ready to get out of this chair. So then we go to the jail, where Desmond is in the back of the police car with Saeed and Cassidy. And he makes the deal with Saeed and Cassidy to get busted out of jail. He's like, yeah, if we get out of jail here, like, will you do me a favor? And they both agree. So then the van stops, and when it opens to reveal what cop is letting them out, it's Mr. Echo. Mr. Echo is driving the police van as a disguised cop. It's not Ana Lucia. So then obviously they have other accomplices besides Mr. Echo. Now in the actual show, it's Hurley that shows up with the two cars. But in my version, it's going to be Bernard. It can't be Hurley because remember, Hurley's not in the Boom world. But Bernard's in the Boom world, so it's going to be Bernard. And remember, it is Saeed and Cassidy, not Kate. Instead of Hurley, Bernard has the rest of Echo's money. So Bernard and Echo have like a very brief like recognition response because remember, they're both the tailies. So like Bernard says, good to see you again, Echo. And Echo has like no idea what he's talking about. And then Desmond and Cassidy go one way in Rose's car, and Bernard and Saeed go another way in Bernard's car. Cassidy asks Desmond where are they going, and Desmond says to the Drive Shaft concert. So back on the island, Ben and Locke are on the Zodiac sailing in the sea, and suddenly Locke gets a sense of relief. Ben asks, what is it? And Locke says, I can leave the island. I don't have to kill them. Ben actually looks a little relieved, but Locke says, no. I still need you to kill them after I leave, but I can leave now without them dying. Turns out, Kate and James don't want to stop me, and Hurley can't do it on his own, so I'm free to go. Ben asks, are you going to sail away on the boat? I don't know what the new bearing is. And Locke says, the bearing is 342. But no, I'm not sailing away on the boat. It's too risky. But I know that the Orchid is the only way I can leave for sure. So then we have a commercial break and we come back and the episode is going to end with Ben and Locke at the Orchid. Locke tells Ben that he's going to finally leave the island and Ben promised to kill the others when he's gone. Locke says that Ben is in charge again and goes into the Orchid, but as he makes his way to the wheel, he is repelled by the electromagnetic field, just like the smoke monster is. Locke says, looks like the island won't let me leave alone, and Ben suggests that they do have to kill them first. But Locke says that's not it. Locke says, I needed them to die because they could bring me back after I left. But I realize now that whatever repels the monster now applies to me. Ben asks Locke how he will leave the island now. And then Locke says that he has to destroy the island. And we see the Lost logo. Alright, now we've made it to the final episode of the show. It is episode 16, The End, Part 1, which is a Jack-centric episode. So I'm going to take a quick time out and give you an opportunity to leave your comments here. I'm very curious what you guys were thinking was going on going into this episode, and for the actual show. My theory going into the finale was that the actions of the finale would create the flash sideways, and it wasn't the bomb. That's what I thought the twist was going to be. So I'm very curious. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought was going to happen when the show ended. So like I said, in my version, episode 16, The End, Part 1, it's a Jack-centric episode. So yep, the pilot was a Jack-centric episode. The end is a Jack-centric episode. We're going back to our roots. So, Act 1, before the bomb, The very first scene we're going to have in this episode is the scene of Jack and Christian talking by the pool the night before Jack's wedding to Sarah from the Do No Harm flashback. Now, I know that in season 1 I told you at the time that we were not going to be doing that flashback. And yes, to the most part, that is correct. But that doesn't mean we're not going to be grabbing scenes from it. But I will tell you, this is the one and only scene from that flashback we're grabbing. The scene of Jack and Christian talking by the pool. And that scene is exactly the same. Now, the montage of where everyone is versus their Flash Sideways counterparts is negated because, remember, there are no Flash Sideways counterparts. You're either in the Boom world or the Bust world. So showing like where Ben is versus where Ben is or whatever, that makes no sense here. So we're getting rid of the montage that opens up this episode. So after we see the flashback of Jack and Christian, we are at the church with Desmond and Cassidy on the Boom world. Desmond takes delivery of Christian's body while Cassidy waits in the car. Desmond says change of plans and that he needs Cassidy to wait at the church instead of going to the concert. Cassidy says, "What's going to stop me from running off?" Desmond says, "Nothing. But if you do, it'll be the biggest regret of your life, and your loved ones will suffer." Cassidy says, "I have no loved ones." And Desmond says, "Wait and see." So we're still in the Boom world, and then we're going to be with Saeed and Bernard arriving at the hotel to bring Charlie to the concert. This scene is basically going to go exactly the same, except Bernard chloroforms Charlie as opposed to Hurley shooting Charlie with a dart. So that's basically the difference here. Other than that, it's the same scene, except Bernard gets Hurley's lines, basically. And kind of like Desmond, it appears that Bernard also knows what's going on. So then we're back on the island. Sawyer goes into the four-toed Sawyer statue room and down the hallway. And when he gets to the chambers where the portals are, he discovers that they are also lined with C4, and they cannot be accessed either. Since he played with the C4 on the boat, he isn't going to try it here. After Sawyer finds out the exits at the statues are rigged to explode, he decides to go find Hurley and Christian at the beach. On the way, he runs into Locke and Ben and hides in the bushes to see what they are up to. Locke gathers some rope while Ben puts a gun on Sawyer and brings him out. Locke asks Sawyer what he's doing there, and Sawyer says that he knew about the portal too, but now can't use it. Locke asks Sawyer if he knows what he's going to do next, and Sawyer sarcastically says, "Destroy the island?" And Locke says he's right. Sawyer asks if he's going down with the island, and Locke says no, but everyone else is going down. Sawyer asks why. What does them dying have anything to do with leaving the island? Locke says, "Haven't you noticed what the monster does all the time? It kills. Yeah, to feed on electrical energy, but it likes to kill." Sawyer says, "Okay, fine. If you or your monster buddy wants me dead, then why can't you do it? Why try to drown us in the sub as opposed to 3 mercy kills one by one? Or is this like your father all over again? You just can't make the kill yourself?" Locke says, "Well, James, let's just say the island won't let me. The island is a living thing, and all living things can protect in certain situations. For instance," Locke takes out his gun and unloads all the bullets onto Sawyer. Locke says, "See? Nothing hit you. Why? The island protected you. If I did the same thing on the other side of the planet, same thing, the island will protect you. But the island doesn't foresee everything. Ben could unload on Charles Whitmore and nothing would happen to him. In fact, Ben just tried to kill Whitmore before you came, and nothing happened to him, because the island's protecting Whitmore just like the island just protected you. But the island hasn't made any rules for Ben killing you." Ben rose his gun to Sawyer to kill him, but Ben hesitated. And when he hesitated, Sawyer hits him and takes the gun. And as he faces Locke and now a bloody-nosed Ben, Sawyer says, "I'll be seeing you," and he makes his escape. So at this point, Sawyer assumed that all the exits had C4 in it, including the Orchid. Ben asks Locke why he's not going after Sawyer. Locke says, "I don't need them dead anymore. It was the smoke monster that needed them dead. because it can't kill Kate, Sawyer, and Hugo, but needs them dead so it can leave the island, because they have the ability to bring the monster back to the island as if it never left at all. Ben asks, even though he really doesn't understand, if the smoke monster comes back, how does that affect you? You would still be gone, wouldn't you? Locke says, exactly, that's why I don't need them dead anymore. But as you saw, I can't leave the island either. I'm stuck here just like the smoke monster, so that's why I'm going to boat away from this place, blow up the island, and watch it sink. Ben said that before, when you said you were going to destroy the island, I thought you meant figuratively. Locke said, oh, because I said you'd be in charge? Sorry, now it appears it'll be on the bottom of the ocean. But you're more than happy to join me on the Zodiac when I leave. Locke's plan deviates from the smoke monsters because the monster lives on the island, it's stuck on the island, so therefore it's not going to want the island itself to be destroyed because that would mean destroying the monster, potentially. After Locke says he wanted to watch the island sink, the smoke monster appears and actually tries to attack Locke. But Locke is so in tune with the island and smoke monster, he is able to repel it like he had his own sonic fence. The monster makes a howling sound in its frustration and flees to the other side of the island in the woods. And in those same woods, Lee is there with his walkie-talkie trying to reach Ben on the walkie, but he gets nothing. And just then he looks up and sees the smoke monster. The smoke monster then kills Lee very quickly, as Lee is the last one on the island that the monster can kill. So back at the barracks, Richard and Widmore discuss what they are going to do. Widmore says he's going after his daughter. Widmore says he has C4 on all the island's portals, so Locke can't take the smoke monster off the island. Richard says, have you also C4'd the heart? And Widmore asks what the heart is. But Richard doesn't take time to explain what the heart is. Richard runs off. And Widmore does not go after Richard. Widmore also heads back to Hydra Island. So then that scene with Desmond, Bernard, Rose, and Vincent is removed because Bernard, Rose, and Desmond are not on the island. So next on Boom World, Jin and Sun are talking in their hotel room after their press conference with Duncan Forrester. The entire conversation is in English because Jin had learned English in prison and Sun had already learned English. Sun admits she was going to leave him at the airport, but Jin admits he was going to use that cash to run away in America. Sun also says she had an affair, and Jin says he forgives her because he's been a horrible husband. They kiss, and then boom, that's when they have the same flash that they do in the actual show of where they remember their life when the universe was combined. So they're very happy, they hug, they kiss, they remember themselves, and then there's a knock on the door, on the hotel door. And they open it, and it is Desmond. And Desmond says, well, looks like you two don't need any convincing. And I know in the actual show that this would be around the time that Juliet would show up in the finale, but there is no Juliet in the finale. Alright, so back in the bust world, Sawyer cuts off Christian and Hurley on the way back to the beach. Sawyer says that Widmore C4'd all the exits, there's no way out. And Christian said, right, I forgot I told Widmore about that too. Locke removed the one from the Orchid, so you should be able to get out that way. Sawyer says, well then in that case we all need to go, because Locke says he's going to destroy the island. Christian closes his eyes and looks frustrated. Hurley said, uh-oh, you didn't see this coming, did you? Christian said, no, I didn't. Locke and I can both see the same thing, so it's possible to receive some of the same futuristic messages. I didn't foresee him doing this because the smoke monster loses power this way. Sawyer said he saw the smoke monster attack Locke, but Locke was able to repel it. So it looks like Locke and Smokey are at odds, and Locke is winning. Hurley asks the obvious. Wait a minute. If Locke wants to leave the island, and to do that he takes down the smoke monster, who cares if Locke uses the Orchid to go away? Why not just let him leave? Christian says, two things, Hugo. One, if the island goes, we go, right? Hurley says, not if we take the Orchid portal. Christian says, two, If the island goes, the portals do too. And Locke will do what he has to do before we can get to the portal. I believe the monster will eventually come out of Locke. It's like a virus. It may take days or months or even years, but if there's even a chance that that thing gets out in the real world, that's it. You've seen what this monster can do. It will destroy everyone if it gets off this island. Sawyer says, "You're saying if we don't take care of this, everyone dies?" Christian says, "Yes." Sawyer says, "Son of a bitch." Hurley asks if the monster will try to stop us. Christian said, "The monster is like a dog trying to chase a car, but in this case it can sense danger from Locke, so in a way, we are the best chance of survival for it. So it'll leave us alone, not to mention we all give it a sour taste anyways. It only likes certain electricity. We don't have the acquired taste. Haven't you ever noticed that the smoke monster has never attacked you individually? But as weird as it may seem, the monster and us have the same goal, to stop Locke. And I think there's only one way to do it." Hurley asks where do they need to go. Christian says, "The only place that can destroy the island besides a nuclear bomb is its heart. That's where Locke is going. So that's where we need to go." So Christian, Sawyer, and Hurley trek across the island while Ben and Locke trek towards the heart. Richard grabs some C4 from the barracks and also runs towards the heart. So meanwhile on Hydra Island, Kate is at the portal having no idea how to start it. Widmore shows up and says, "It's a two-person job." And Kate yells at Widmore, "You kidnapped my son!" And Widmore says, "We don't have time for this. Look at the skies, and furthermore, I have a gun." Kate looks up and is surprised to see that the sky also appears to have skyscrapers in it. This is a sign of the two universes being ripped further apart. Widmore shows her how to activate the controls and tells her to use them on him so he can get to his daughter in the other universe. Kate says she needs to get to her son in the other universe because he was the one who stole him. He says if she doesn't activate it, he will kill her right now. Kate activates the portal, but unlike his daughter, Widmore does not cross over into the other universe and is burnt to a crisp and dies. After seeing this, Kate is now deterred from trying to use the portal herself, and she has a moment of clarity. She takes a couple deep breaths, and we kind of see like a little 360 shot around her as Kate has like this moment of clarity, this moment of deep thought. And then we see Kate making her way back to the other island. So in the Boom world, we're going to have Jack and Locke's preoperative conversation, and that scene is exactly the same as it is on the actual show. So back in the Bust world, as Christian, Sawyer, and Hurley trek towards the heart, they also see the LA skyline in the surrounding sky, as if the island itself was in the middle of downtown Los Angeles. Sawyer asks, "What the hell is going on?" And Christian says, "That's the erosion of the two universes. It's happening quicker than I expected, but its effects can be seen here clearer than anywhere else. The outside world won't notice it for years." Christian, Sawyer, and Hurley run into Ben and Locke. Since there's no Kate in my version, no one's going to be shooting at Locke at this point. Locke goes straight up to Christian. This is the first time that Christian and Locke have seen each other since season 5. But this is also the first time that Locke has seen Christian since Locke knows that he is Christian's grandson. Because remember, Locke is adult Aaron. Locke says, "Hello, Papa. So now you're the protector of the island. The one job I wanted that you never wanted." Christian says to Locke, "You're doing a stand-up job at protecting the island." Locke says, "So you're here to stop me?" And Christian says, "No, can't stop you. In fact, the fact is we want to go with you." Locke says, "So James has told you the news by now. That means you know I want to destroy the island." And Christian says, "Like you said, it's the job I never wanted." And Locke looks at Christian knowing that that's not true. And Christian says, okay, it's a surprise." And Locke says, "What is?" And Christian says, "How I'm going to kill you." Locke laughs and says, "The island can't hurt me, and we both know the island isn't done with me, so I don't see that happening." So okay, let's get on with it. So then we're going to have a flashback to before the bomb going off. And we flash back to the Lost Missing Pieces episode of Christian giving Jack his watch the day of his wedding. In the scene, Christian tells Jack that Ray was not happy about Christian marrying Margot and thought it was a mistake. And then he gave him this watch, so he never wore it. Christian tells Jack that he is making the right choice, but just like Christian, we never actually see Jack wearing the watch on the show, which symbolizes that he always knew he thought his marriage was bad. So then we go back to the bust world, and we see Ben, Locke, Sawyer, Hurley, and Christian walking to the heart of the island together. Sawyer asks Christian what the surprise is. Christian says Kate. Sawyer says she's halfway to the other errand. She only sees Locke when looking at this one. I do too, for that matter. He's not the same kid I held 3 years ago. Up ahead, Hurley and Locke are walking together. Hurley says, "So, you're Aaron. Do you remember me, like, holding you?" Locke says, "I remember you and Charlie singing James Brown to me the day after I was born. That was cute." Hurley asks, "Who's Charlie?" And then we go back to the Sawyer and Christian conversation. Sawyer asks, "Anything else?" Christian says, "Even when the heart is stopped, the island can survive for a long time. It's not a human being, it won't die right away. The heart stopped for thousands of years, and the island wasn't destroyed. He's not going to be able to sink the island. And I have another plan if he does everything he says he'll do. He's dooming himself, and he doesn't even know it. The key is for him to continue to believe that this is his idea. The fact is, I was thinking of doing this already." Sawyer says, "That's a hell of a long con, Doc." Once they reach the bamboo forest, Locke says to Christian it should just be the two of them, and Christian agrees. Hurley tells Christian he believes in him, and Sawyer apologizes if his actions at the bar led to his death. Christian says that they didn't, and he gives a farewell to everyone. Locke yells as he's leaving, "Let's go!" And, Christian's like, "All right, come." So it's kind of like a tiny little humorous moment there. So Christian and Locke climb into the heart, and Locke explains that they need to make a new lasso. The one that Daniel made all those years ago had fallen apart, which is why Locke brought rope. And it's a different rope that got him into the heart. So he basically brought 2 ropes. Okay, real quick before we go any further. Remember, the actual show, Desmond has like this electromagnetic power, and he's able to walk out and carry it off. Well, in my version, Locke and Christian don't have that power, so they need to make the rope to get the cork off. So that's what's happening here. So while Christian and Locke work together to lasso the cork off the plug, they discuss how Locke would have been a fine addition to the Shepherd family. Locke says, "You and me lassoing some rope? It's like the fishing trip we never had. It's almost like a long overdue grandson and grandfather activity." Christian laughs and says, "Wow. And since when are you appropriating yourself with this family? You don't even know your father's name, do you?" Locke says, "The man who pushed me out the window? I'm not wasting my time on that man anymore." Christian says, "Well, good. No point in dwelling on that. No, I actually met your real father, Thomas. Your birth father? What was his last name?" Locke says nothing. Christian says, "Your last name is Littleton, which is your mother's name. So clearly, you weren't given your father's last name, so you really don't know what it is, do you?" Locke again says nothing. Christian continues, "I'm going to tell you how it is. Your father left your mother, and because of that, you came out a little bastard. You had your conversation with Jacob, and you know that from that he was disappointed in you. Couldn't hold off the smoke monster, so look where we all are now. Now you're infected by it. And you're so far gone you don't know your own thoughts from its thoughts. You want to leave the island? I doubt that. That's not the Aaron I knew, the Locke I knew." Locke says, "You have no idea what I want." Christian says, "Well, I guess that's true. Neither of your grandfathers or uncle wanted anything to do with you, so how would I know what you want? I don't know if the island allows you to remember me picking you up. all those years ago. Locke says, when you took me away from Claire? Yeah, I remember that now. Christian says, maybe if I had you stay with Claire, all this would have been different. Locke says, that's not what the island wanted, and that's why I'm done with it. Christian says, well, I'll tell you this, kiddo. I think you take after your father, not your mother, because you abandoned all of your principles, just like Thomas abandoned Claire. Locke says, you're talking about birth parents I never knew. They aren't my family. Christian says, you sure act like you're a part of this family for someone who says his birth parents aren't his family. The way you were just talking about me, calling me Papa, talking about fishing trips. And I saw you with Claire at the pylons. Yeah, I saw that. You know she's your mom. Locke says, Claire isn't my mother. And Christian says, then who is? So then we go back to the Boom world, and we're going to see Bernard and Saeed waiting outside of a bar. Very similar to the show, besides no Boone in this scene. We see Shannon getting hit by a guy, so Saeed goes out and breaks it up. And when he sees Shannon, he remembers everything, and so does she. And they have the same little flash of them remembering their lives when the universe was whole. And then Saeed says, now I know why I was told returning to the island would give me what I wanted. So then Saeed and Shannon go to the car where Bernard is there smiling. Saeed asks Bernard, what favor does he need in return? Back at the heart of the island, Christian and Locke have made the lasso. They lasso the cork and are able to pull it off of the plug. And once they do that, and the cork is dislodged, the island starts to come apart. Locke says, looks like you were wrong. And Christian said to himself, I don't understand. And Locke said, I've been there, so I'll explain it to you. The island is dead in the other universe. So therefore, dislodging the cork will have a much larger impact given that the island is split in two. Just like you, me, and Richard are also split in two, thanks to this island. Goodbye, Christian. So Locke leaves the heart of the island, but Christian tackles him. Locke looks confused. He says the rules of the island should protect him from being hurt by others. And Christian said, you are wrong too. No personal force field if the island is off. Locke hits him with a rock and escapes. So back in the Boom world, we're at the concert, the Driveshaft concert. And while Driveshaft is playing up on stage, Charlie and Claire see each other. Aaron asks if he can go to the bathroom, so Claire takes him. But Charlie just completely stops playing and goes to check on Claire. Desmond is also there at the concert and observes him asking if she was okay. So basically, all Charlie does is he leaves the stage, he goes to like where the bathrooms are, and asks Claire if she's okay. And that's all it takes for, boom, Charlie and Claire to remember their lives when the universe was whole. And then when Charlie sees Aaron, Charlie even gets more flashes and even has more memories come back to him. So Charlie and Claire remember everything at this point. And then they see Desmond and even more memories form. We see memories of Charlie and Desmond hanging out. Desmond and Claire hanging out. So it's a very happy moment until Charlie asks this question. Charlie asks, I died. Can we stay here? And Desmond says, I'm not sure if our new world will look like this one or the old one. There's only one way to find out. So at that point, Charlie and Claire are kind of nervous because they realize that there's a chance that this won't be permanent. So then we go to Sawyer, Hurley, and Ben waiting outside the bamboo forest as the island starts to fall apart. We see that a tree almost hits Hurley, but Ben shoves Hurley out of the way and gets hit by the tree. Meanwhile, Christian chases after Locke. Sawyer and Hurley try to lift the tree off of Ben. They see Locke run past them, and they ask for help, but Locke keeps going. Ben encourages them to go after Locke. He tells them where the boat is, The Zodiac, that is. Because remember, in the actual show it would be the Elizabeth, but remember there's no Elizabeth because it's in the Boom world, so in this case, Locke is going after the Zodiac. Ben apologizes to Sawyer for putting a gun on him earlier, and then Ben asks Hurley if this act of goodwill makes up for all the bad that he has done. And Hurley says, probably not. Ben laughs and says, bury me next to Alex. And then Ben dies. Then we see Locke approaching Jacob's caves and he's about to go down the ladder. And Christian yells, hey! to Locke before he can get to the ladder. Locke yells, you can't kill me, Papa! And Christian says, kiddo, the island's coming apart. The rules are out. So Christian approaches Locke and they have a very similar fight to how Jack and Locke fight in the actual show's finale. But I have to stress, it's way briefer, like maybe 10% of the actual time. It's a much quicker fight. And Christian is stabbed in the gut and pushed aside. Right after Locke stabs Christian, Sawyer shows up and takes a big swing at Locke, but missed. And Locke used his momentum to push Sawyer off of the cliff, but Sawyer doesn't die. He grabs the ladder and holds on. So Locke looks into the direction that Sawyer came from and says, don't even think about it, Hugo. Now, we don't see Hugo at this time because he's still he's slower, so he's still approaching the side of the cliff. So we look to see no one else approaching. And Locke approaches the ladder, but then hears one final person. Aaron? A voice cries out. It is Kate. She is standing about 10 feet away from him, and she puts down her weapons. Kate says, hi there, baby. Locke says, that's not something I've been called in a long time, Kate. Kate says, no, not Kate, but Mom. Claire and you had no time. None of your foster mothers knew you long enough. You told me about your foster mother who died. Remember that? I remember that. That time you gave me coffee. So I am your mother. And I am so sorry for losing you at the store. I am so sorry you had to live this horrible life in foster care and then grow up to be a part of this ridiculous island. I am so sorry for putting you through this, baby. I am so sorry. At this point, Locke is holding back tears. Kate slowly approaching her son. Kate repeats, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything you want. I'm here for you, whatever you need. Kate finally gets close, and Locke says, Mom. And then Kate and Locke embrace and both cry tears. Hurley gets there and he has no idea what to do. Locke says to Kate, Mom, I can't control it. I don't even know who I am or what are my own thoughts. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Make this pain go away, please. Kate continues to hug him, and she says that, I will. I'm here for you, and I love you. Then Kate pushes Locke off the side of the cliff onto the sharp rocks below. Kate put Aaron out of his misery. He is dead in the bust world. Back in the Boom world, Locke wakes up after surgery and regains his island memories after looking at his foot. And his scene is basically the exact same scene we have in the actual show. Except there's one very, very, very key addition here. When Jack leaves the room, Locke's smile turns to a frown, and he gets up and slaughters Jean the nurse and sneaks out of the hospital. He also kills other people that try to stop him as he leaves the hospital. When he gets to the street, he hails a cab and asks to be taken to the military base. So basically what has happened here is the smoke monster that was living inside Locke in the bust world has now crossed over into his living self in the Boom world. Locke looks out the window and says, I'm finally here. So, I'm going to take a quick time out here just to explain my thought process on this. When I was watching the actual finale, and Locke woke up from surgery, it was the scene right after he dies on the island. So I, honest to God, thought that when Locke woke up off island, it was the smoke monster personality. I quickly realized it was just Locke, but that little bit of time where I thought, oh my God, that's the smoke monster, that made me add the smoke monster here in my version of Lost. So in my version of Lost, when Locke dies on the island, the smoke monster goes into him off island. So that's what's going to happen here. Alright, back to the story. Back in the bust world, Sawyer climbs up the ladder and hugs Kate, who is extremely devastated after sacrificing her son. Christian said, "I knew you had it in you, kiddo. You killed your father. Only makes sense you would kill your son too." Hurley just says, "Dude, wow," in disbelief of the callousness of that comment. Kate is annoyed at this and mutters, "He asked me to." Christian said, "Of course. We never try to hurt our children. Sometimes we just do." Sawyer and Kate realize that Christian is badly wounded. Christian explains he's not healing with the island off, and Sawyer asks, how do we turn it back on? Christian says, "No time. Look around us. The membrane between the two universes is starting to deteriorate. Where your friends are is off-world, and they will transport to whatever world is healthier, and at this stage, it appears to be the other world that is going to make it." Sawyer asks about the Widmore portal on Hydra Island, but Kate says it's not safe to use. Christian says he will go turn the island back on again if the three of them go to the beach. He says once the island is back on, if nothing happens at the beach, they can escape through the orchid. He also says he needs help getting there. So given the seriousness of this, the idea that like everybody could die, Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley agree to just go along with this and see what happens. So Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley take Christian to the heart of the island, lower him down into it, and then head to the beach to try to heal the universe and save themselves. Meanwhile, in the Boom universe, Locke is at the military installation taking out as many security guards as he can. When he gets to where the smoke monster is, he releases it. Just as he releases the smoke monster, Locke is shot down by authorities. Locke is now dead in the Boom universe. A little bit of black smoke leaves Locke's body after he is killed and joins the rest of the black smoke, proving that if Locke had left the island, the smoke monster would have gotten off the island too. So meanwhile, in the Boom world, Jack gets to the concert and is surprised to see that Claire and Charlie are together. Jack meets Charlie and then realizes he was on the plane too, and Jack gets a little confused why it is all people from that plane 3 years ago. Then a news broadcast comes on at the concert hall and says that the monster got free and is ripping up LA County. The news forecasts that it could be the end of life as they know it. Suddenly, Claire tells Jack that they need to go to their father's funeral. Jack tells her that the world may be ending, and Claire says, "Exactly. Don't you want to say goodbye to your father before it does?" Next, we see Hurley, Sawyer, and Kate at the beach. The island is definitely showing membrane, but they can't see the other side of it. So basically what I mean by membrane is that like the air in front of them looks a little distorted. Like the island is literally like, not the island per se, but like the space around them is literally kind of ripping apart. That's what I mean by membrane. So back at the heart of the island, Christian tries as hard as he can to relasso the cork over the hole, but he can't quite make it. So Christian picks up the cork and walks into the electromagnetic field to restore the island. But Christian dies from his wounds while doing this. Meanwhile, in the Boom world, Jack, Claire, and Aaron arrive at the church. Claire says Christian is in the back of the church and she will meet him inside. Jack asks if she wants to come too, but Claire says she wants to let him see his father alone. Jack experiences something strikingly similar to the ending of the show. He approaches the coffin, and in that moment, memories of his entire life return to him. Memories from when the universes were merged. When he opens the coffin, he finds it empty. Suddenly, Christian greets him with a gentle, "Hey, kiddo," and Jack turns to see his father standing there. Jack tells Christian that he died. Christian agrees, but he was actually referring to what had just happened on the island. When Christian died in one universe, the Bust world, he was able to awaken in the other, the Boom world. Even though he inhabits the body that has died 3 years ago, the fractured laws of physics between the two universes make such impossibilities real. Seeing his father restores all of Jack's island memories. When Christian asks Jack if he understands, Jack admits, "I blew up the island and created a world where we never crashed." They embrace. Not because of the bomb, but because Jack feels remorse for having gotten his father fired, and he wants to make peace. Deep down, Jack senses this is their final goodbye, knowing the monster is approaching. Christian explains that everyone in the church is someone Jack shared a life with in the other universe. They have all gathered to help one another heal and move on. He adds that they will also remember what they had forgotten. Though Jack has regained his knowledge, he still struggles to understand the nature of the two universes. Christian tells him that Desmond has been bringing their friends together, helping them recall the world before the split. As the end of the world drew near, they all came to the church so they can move on together. Despite the looming end, Jack feels a strange calm, accepting that nothing more can be done. Christian, however, knows that his own time is nearly over, but chooses not to tell Jack. He wants to preserve the hope that his ultimate goal of healing the universes is still possible. He thought that telling Jack the plan may actually ruin it. So what Christian's doing here is basically, this is the moment. This is the moment where they will either heal the universe or they won't. But he doesn't want to tell Jack that it's either all or nothing here. He'd rather have Jack believes that this is it. So Jack and Christian go inside the church. And in the church we have Desmond, Penny, Bernard, Rose, Charlie, Claire, Libby, Cassidy, Aaron, Jin, Sun, Saeed, and Shannon. And at the back of the church, there's a membrane. That same membrane I mentioned before, where the air is kind of almost looking like water, like the air is almost deteriorating. And through the membrane, though, they can see Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley on the beach on the island. And as they look around them in the church goes back and forth between looking like the interior of the church and looking like the skies around the beach. It flickers back and forth. Kate sees Aaron and runs towards the membrane. Cassidy sees Sawyer, and between them, they remember their daughter Clementine. And Hurley and Libby see each other, and they begin to remember. Jack and Kate see each other, and Kate is able to get all of her memories back of Jack, even though Jack has already remembered Kate at this point. And the walls of the universe are eroded enough that Jack and Kate and Libby and Hurley are able to cross universes and embrace as well. Hurley and Charlie also see each other, and they hug as well. And then all of them are able to be in the same place at the same time, and they all embrace each other. The background for all of them is both the church and the island, and one of them is going to dominate. It's clear that the Boom universe is dying as the smoke monster approaches the church, but they are all still hugging, and the reunions continue. Meanwhile, on the island, though, like outside of the beach and the church, Christian had turned the island back on. So the smoke monster is able to reform. The monster slowly approaches the shoreline and notices that the electromagnetism isn't as strong as it normally is. So the monster realizes that it can make a break for it because the border is still down even though the island is on. But it won't last very long. So the smoke monster reforms all the way and races along the water to get away from the island. And remember, the smoke monster can't fly. It has to go along the water. So back in the church/beach, Christian bids farewell to both Jack and Claire. And notice I said Jack and Claire, because in the actual show, Christian only says goodbye to Jack, but says nothing to Claire. Christian opens the door, and a brilliant white light floods through, signaling the moment when the universes merge. In an instant, they find themselves back on the island, standing on the familiar beach. They thought it was the end, but it was not. The monster gets to the border the exact moment that the two universes merge back together. When this happens, the electromagnetic border reactivates, and the monster is caught in its reactivation, as if a vast dome of energy collapses directly upon it. Unable to escape, the creature is forced to endure the electromagnetic force, trapped as though bound to an immense sonic fence. For 15 agonizing seconds, the smoke monster screams in pain against the invisible barrier, and then, at last, its form disintegrates, the darkness dissipates, and the monster ceases to exist. And we see the Lost logo. But remember, this is a 2-part episode. So the next episode is episode 17, The End, Part 2, which is still a Jack-centric episode. They get back to the beach, but not all as is expected. On the beach, we only have Jack, Kate, Sawyer, Hurley, Sun, Jin, Aaron, Bernard, and Rose. In the finale, when Jin and Sun finally see each other on the beach, they embrace for the first time on the island. And after they embrace, Sun gives Jin his ring back. While Sun and Jin are embracing, they immediately notice that not everyone is there. Where's Saeed and Shannon? Where's Charlie? Where's Desmond and Penny? Where's Libby? Where's Claire? Where's Aaron? They all frantically look around. But then they see a really neat thing. They see Kate holding Aaron as tight as she can. 3-year-old Aaron is there with them. When they see Kate is holding Aaron, she couldn't be happier, crying tears of joy. Aaron says, "Mommy, what's wrong?" And Kate says, "It's okay, baby. It's okay to cry when you're so happy." Though everyone is showing concern for their missing loved ones, Jack figures it out. Jack says, "We created a world where Flight 815 never crashed, and then decided that we preferred the world where it did crash." Sawyer says, "That's simple, huh?" Jack says, "Charlie was dead, Libby was dead, that's why they aren't here." Kate says, removing the tears, "That doesn't explain Saeed or Desmond or Claire." Suddenly, Claire joins up with the group. She says she appeared where she was last on the island, down in the Orchid Station by the donkey wheel. And she says it was probably a different spot than they landed on because she was holding Charlie when the universes merged. But Hurley says, "I was holding Libby and I landed on the beach." Rose says, "I don't think we're going to find any logical answers when it comes to universes forming and reforming." They all seem to agree on that. Claire sees Aaron for the first time, and Kate unselfishly gives Aaron to Claire. Then Claire hugs Kate and allows Kate to hold him, all three hugging, even though Aaron is extremely confused. Sun still has Charlie's ring that has the DS on it, that she found in the Season 5 finale. So when she greets Claire in the series finale, which is right now, Sun gives Claire Charlie's ring. After Claire puts Charlie's ring on, Claire says, "So it's probably up to me to fill everyone in. So my father was also Christian, but our grandfather, Ray, is from the universe where the island is from." Jack says that he feels it too. Claire means that Christian taught all this to her. Jack says, "No, it's different. It's like after the universe reformed, the island gave me the same information that my father and Locke got when the island brought them back to life." Claire says, "You're right. I feel it too. I know everything going on too." Jack says, "And our grandfather is alive, and I know where he is. He can answer all of our questions." Hurley says, "What's going on?" And Jack explains, "Claire and I are also from the island's universe. We're like a fourth of it, because our grandfather is Jacob. So, kind of like Christian knew everything just before the island reformed, now Claire and I know everything because we have lineage to the island's home universe." And Hurley's like, "Okay, whatever." And just then, right after Hurley says that, the island begins to fall apart again. And Hurley says, "I thought Christian fixed the island." And Jack said, "He did, but something else broke it. So then we go to the heart of the island, where Richard is setting up the C4 in the heart of the island to blow up the heart of the island. But before he could blow it up, he hears some noise coming underneath the plug. And it's a huge rattling noise going on underneath the plug. And suddenly, something bursts through the floor of the heart of the island, disintegrating the plug completely. Just a wide gaping hole at this point. And we see 3 new smoke monsters burst through the ground, where the cork could obviously no longer cover it. Therefore, the island started to break apart again. So, just to clarify, this scene with Richard was slightly before the island started coming apart. So basically, the smoke monsters bursting through the floor started the island falling apart. So that's basically what happened. So after 3 new smoke monsters broke through, this got the attention of 3 other smoke monsters, and 3 more come up from the black pit. So there's suddenly 6 smoke monsters inside the heart of the island. They immediately saw Richard and killed him right then and there, because he had a different taste than the original smoke monster. So the original smoke monster didn't like Richard's taste, more or less. But these smoke monsters have a different taste, and therefore are able to kill Richard immediately. So to very much clarify, Richard never actually blows up the heart of the island. The smoke monsters broke through the floor and did it before Richard could activate the C4. But either way, it probably would have led to the smoke monster coming through either way. But the good news for Richard is that he wasn't the cause of the problem. So then we're back at the beach. Jack said, "We did exactly what the smoke monsters wanted. When the universes combined, the Boom universe still had a dead island. So it was going to take some time for the island to heal itself. So this was like dropping a bowling ball in a chest during major heart surgery. When the smoke monster died, this was felt in the universe under the island and stirred up the remaining smoke monsters, which is what caused them to break out. And when the island was in pain just after the universe is reformed, it couldn't stop the flying new smoke monsters from escaping." Hurley says, "The flying smoke monsters?" Jack says, "Give it time. You'll see that they'll be flying soon." So they come up with a plan. They were in immediate danger due to the proximity of the smoke monsters. And there wasn't much more that they could do as a group to stop them. Like, what are they going to do to stop them? So for most of them, escape was actually necessary. So Sun, Jin, Kate, Aaron, Claire, Bernard, and Rose would go to the Orchid and try to escape. Sawyer and Hurley would go to the Heart to see what was going on, and Jack would go find Jacob to get more answers. Sawyer at first refuses, saying, "No offense, Doc, but your plans just get people killed." And Jack tells Sawyer that there's something he needs to tell him. So meanwhile at the temple, Cindy and the rest of the others have appeared after the universes merged together. So remember how Cindy was in the Boom world? Well, now since the universes are merged together again, Cindy is now back on the island where she was before the universes split. But that's not necessarily a good thing, because remember, Dogen is dead now. So now all the ash that was surrounding the temple is turned off. So Jacob's ash circles now worked because Jacob is back. So the monster couldn't enter certain parts of the island, like the beach and many other places. But since Dogen was dead, the temple was left unguarded. So the 6 smoke monsters head right to the temple. And Cindy and the other half of the others' population were all killed by the 6 new smoke monsters. So Jack gets to the statue and sees Ray, his grandfather. Ray and Jack hug. And Ray jokingly says, "I told you I'd get away from that place." That place meaning the old folks' home. Ray apologizes to Jack for everything that has happened to him, and says while he's grateful for what did happen, he never intended for him or Claire or anyone else to come to the island. Ray explains the plan was to have Christian taken back to LA on a cargo plane owned by Hurarat Aviation. The Hurarat plane would be diverted to the island while Oceanic 815 landed in LA. Then Christian would take over the island as planned. Jack told Ray that it was a cruel fate to force Christian to stay on the island because the world thought he was dead. Ray insisted that Christian left and realized the best place for him was on the island, and that would have happened whether he took Hurarat or Oceanic. Jack says, "Granddad, I have so many questions. First of all, What's going on right now? Jacob says, what's going on is this universe is lost. Jack says, what do you mean? Jacob says, I thought love would save the universe. This was our third attempt to save this Earth. And unlike Malkin, I thought recombining with love using people from our universe like yourself and Claire and Aaron would have done it. But I didn't anticipate the attention of the other smoke monsters, the ones not bound to this island. They ripped a hole in the heart, and now it's only a matter of time before they fly away. I have ash all over the island. It'll take them probably a few hours to find the way out. Jack says, I sent everyone to the Orchid. Dad turned the island back on, but it's in a weakened state. Are there no other portals? Jacob says, we don't need portals when universe hopping. You remember how to do it, right? You all just did it to fix this universe. And you've been to our universe before. That was you that allowed you to travel there. So go get your sister and nephew, and let's go home. Your real home, Jack. I'll introduce you to your real family. Your family living and waiting for you on Earth 1. Jack hesitated. Granddad, this is my home. I have Mom still, and other relatives and friends all from here. I'm not going to leave them behind. Jacob says, Jack, the universe is infinite and there are plenty of other worlds to save. And Jack says, not for me. Jacob hugged Jack and repeated Christian's favorite line, I'll see you, kiddo. And then Jacob disappeared back to his universe. Jacob appears on Earth 1 and he enters a 2007 past version of his home. So he took a time portal to get back to 2207. The time portals on Earth 1 could never allow him to go beyond his own future, so he could only go as far as 2207 on Earth 1. So back on the island, Jack got to the heart with Sawyer and Hurley both there. Sawyer says, it's no good, Doc, there's nothing to cover. Jack says, Jacob is gone. And Sawyer said, well, Jacob has the right idea. Jack looks down into the heart of the island and looks closely at the Egyptian writing. And then we see the final flashback of the show. Jack is in college in a language class and realizes after the first day it's not for him. He says he's going to drop the class. He already tried flying and it wasn't for him. And he thinks he wants to try firearm education instead. And the professor, played by John Rhys Davis, says, you don't want to, your time, the professor repeats. You don't want to, he points at the ceiling and repeats, your time. Jack questions what he's doing, and the professor points to the ceiling and says, those Egyptian symbols mean sacrifice. I don't want you to sacrifice your time, but I wanted you to learn at least one Egyptian symbol before leaving this class. Good luck, Mr. Shepard. Jack and the professor shake hands, and the flashback ends. So we are back at the island, and Jack sees the same symbol he had seen in his class and realizes what he had to do. Elsewhere on the island, Claire realizes what Jack's about to do and says that they have to get back to the heart of the island right now, and they redirect from the Orchid back to the heart of the island. We have Jack, Hurley, and Sawyer like in the little stream right outside the heart of the island. And Jack has Hurley promise that if anything happens to him, he will watch over the island. Hurley reluctantly promises, and Sawyer thanks Jack for everything, and then Jack goes into the heart. Suddenly they hear a large noise, and Jack and everyone look up to see that the monsters have figured out the way out, and they are flying towards the border. Hurley says, they fly now. So just to make it clear, once the smoke monsters broke out, that once again shut down the border. So once again, there's no border at the island. So the monsters can fly away from the island at this point. So Jack goes into the heart and sees a little hole like at the side of the area where the heart is. And he looks through the hole and he sees that the lagoon that they have spent so much time at is actually right in front of the heart of the island. And Jack thinks about how many times he went there and never noticed the heart before. So Jack approaches the pit, which is now a wide open hole. Jack takes one last look around just as everyone shows up and looks down to see what he's doing. He looks up at everybody, and from his angle, the last person Jack sees is Kate. He blows her a kiss and jumps into the pit. The 6 monsters, like a moth to the flame, are drawn to Jack when he jumps in the pit, as if he was robbing their house and that he needed to be stopped right away. So the monsters stop trying to leave the island and they go right back towards the pit. The monsters follow Jack into the floor, and as they did, the time in the heart of the island moved in reverse. And the heart of the island returned to what it looked like before, with a stone cork covering it. So the monsters are back under the ground, and so it appears is Jack. Jack sacrificed himself to save the island. So outside of the heart of the island, we have everybody there mourning Jack. We have Jin, Sun, Claire, Kate, Aaron, Bernard, Rose, Sawyer, and Hurley. And as they all mourn Jack, Hurley said, "Jack said I have to protect the island, and I don't know how to do it." Sawyer starts to make a bunch of suggestions, and Hurley said, "I could really use some help to get all this started," and he asks Sawyer to help him. Sawyer gives him a look like he really doesn't want to help him. He looks around, and Kate and pretty much everyone gives him a look that he needs to do it. So Sawyer says, "Okay, fine, I'll do it." Hurley smiled and said, "Cool." Jacob returns to the future to find out that Earth 108 survived, but that it only cost him the life of his son and grandson because he wasn't willing to make the sacrifice himself. He was surprised to see that a pocket universe was created in the process, and he wonders what the pocket universe is. Then we see a young Richard Malkin there, once again played by Jason Ritter. This is the Richard Malkin that was on the second mission, but because the third mission was done, the second mission never happened. So this is the Richard Malkin who never went to Earth 108. And that Malkin tells Jacob that the pocket universe was created in the process by the love of Saeed and Shannon, and they were able to go on and create a whole universe for themselves through their love. And Malkin explains, "That's what my counterpart knew." According to Malkin's notes, in his timeline, an older Saeed would meet an older Shannon around the year 2025, and they would fall in love and have one of the greatest love stories the Earth has ever had. We just made them meet a little earlier than expected. Someone in the room asks what number they should assign to this new universe. And Jacob smiles and says, "Instead of a number, let's call this new universe Earth Love." So yeah, if it's not clear, Saeed and Shannon did not appear at the beach because when the universes formed together, their love was able to create their own pocket universe. So they basically have their own universe separate from Earth 108 that has the entire universe in it, but only themselves. So Jacob is given a report as to what happened to Earth 108 after he left, and we see a slow motion montage of everything that happened after Jacob left. It's revealed that the island itself moved to Upper California to drop everyone off, so everyone was able to just walk off the island and back to California. While this montage is occurring, we actually see Jack waking up in the lagoon. So even though he jumped into the pit, apparently the electromagnetism basically moved him from the pit to the lagoon. But he is slowly dying from the injuries he suffered from the electromagnetism. So the montage fluctuates between Jack walking through the bamboo forest and a montage of what happened to everybody else. So we quickly see Saeed and Shannon in their new universe making a life for themselves. We see Jin and Sun living in Albuquerque, New Mexico after Jin quit his job and then took Sun and Gian to live in America with Sun's oceanic settlement and investment in Apec Industries. So they go with Jin's plan and relocate to America. Bernard and Rose stayed on the island in their cabin, and Vincent also was there. Desmond and Penny wake up in the hospital and go on to run Widmore Industries, as it was all left to Penny after Charles died. Sawyer and Hurley put up a keep out sign by the heart of the island. Kate and Aaron and Claire all live at Kate's house together, as Claire and Kate decided to both raise Aaron together. Hurley is seen with Claire on the island, being taught about everything that she knows that Christian taught her. Sawyer shows up at Cassidy's house, and he meets Clementine for the first actual time. Finally, Jack comes to his final resting place, the same area where Christian also died. Christian had also been transported outside of the heart of the island, and then he walked through the bamboo forest and died himself. Jack lays down next to where Christian had died, and that's when Vincent the dog comes up to him. Jack reflects one last time on his life, and he smiles in his thoughts. He takes one last look at his father, and looks at the sky, and closes his eye. And then we see the Lost logo. Alright. Well, guys, that is it. That concludes my alternate version of Lost. I want to thank you.
Epilogue. Ben dies. So how does the epilogue work?
Okay. Right. So, with Ben dying in the finale, clearly that changes the epilogue. The epilogue, of course, is what came out in the DVD. Okay? The epilogue was just in the DVD. It was never released in the actual episode. So if you have not seen the epilogue, you can find it on YouTube. It's 11 minutes long. Quickly go back and watch it, and then come back here, because we changed up the epilogue, and but we add one, I think, very interesting part to the epilogue that I think you guys are going to like. So here we go with my version of the epilogue. Since Ben is dead, the number 2 role of the island goes to Sawyer now. Since Sawyer was also Dharma, he takes Ben's place when he goes to the Dharma food factory to shut down the pallet drops. They also watch the same Betamax video as well. Now, in that Betamax video, in the epilogue, there's no mention of polar bears at the Orchid. The nuclear leak caused the gestation problem, not the electromagnetism. Now, the next part of the epilogue has nothing to do with Walt, but everything to do with Juliet. So, Walt will not be in the epilogue at all. Hurley and Sawyer go to Isaac and ask if they can go back to 1977 to save Juliet. There is no record from Dharma or the others of her dying or even being in the hatch. It's clear that in the reformed universe, the bomb never went off in a way that killed Juliet. And she only existed in the bust world, and they know that because Sawyer remembered Juliet when the universe split. So only Sawyer goes back in time to the island, and when he arrives back on the island in 1977, he is awoken by Jacob that tells Sawyer that he should be in the future. And then Sawyer says, "Well, I'm back from the future." Jacob smiles and says that he had a friendship with James Ford on Earth 8. So Jacob is familiar with Sawyer, even though he may not know he was on a plane that crashes on the island 27 years later. Next we see Juliet lying injured from her fall, and Sawyer going down into the hatch. If this was not the island, Juliet would have died. But it has been a couple days since the incident, and Juliet has been without food or drink, but was healing enough that she was starting to be able to move. So basically the reason she didn't die is because the island was able to heal her. But not completely, she still needs medical help. Sawyer tells Jacob that he wants a way off the island, and the island itself tells Jacob that it was okay to share the LA portal information with Sawyer. So Sawyer and Juliet are allowed to use the LA portal, and Sawyer takes Juliet to St. Sebastian Hospital, where many doctors, including Christian Shepherd, work on her since they are still in the 70s. Once she is fixed up, they fly to Australia and see Isaac. Isaac is given a note from future Isaac to take them when they want to go. So Isaac sends them back to 2010, but when they land, they end up in Tahiti. We then see Sawyer and Juliet go to Cassidy's house, where we see the same Sawyer, Cassidy, and Clementine shot that we saw in the finale. but it zooms out to reveal Juliet smiling in the background. And then we have a scene of Juliet reuniting with her sister and her nephew. And then this time we zoom out to see Sawyer smiling in the background. The island has attached itself to Northern California so Hurley can get back without using a portal. We then go out to the road and see Hurley smiling in the Dharma van with his parents in the back. He plans to show them the island. His mom is complaining about the van, and Hurley mentions the time that Roger's head was back there, and his parents shut up in surprise. Hurley and his parents drive off to get back to the island, and as they're driving along the road, you can see them slowly driving onto the island. And then we see the Lost logo, and that's it. Yep, so a lot of Sawyer there, and it's just cool to see that the Juliet gets to live. I think that was cool. It's kind of implied in the finale. It's not directly said, but I think it's a pretty neat thing. So, okay, guys, we are nearing the end of this. We're basically done. I really, really, really want you to know how much I appreciated you guys watching all of these videos. This is obviously just my version of Lost. I mean, and you gave up so much of your time just to watch it, and I can't tell you how much that means to me. It really does. I highly encourage you, if you didn't like this version, to come up with your own and do the same thing. This was a lot of work, okay? Lots of work. I wrote over 80,000 words, okay? So this is not for the faint of heart, but I encourage you to do this if you ever want to. What have I learned from this experience? I learned how hard it is to do all this. I had to rewrite the season 6 like 3 times. I had to like really make sure I knew what I was talking about. Make sure I found like different things, and I had to like go back and change things because of it. And what I've learned is that, like, even though this is my version of Lost, I think I like the actual show better than my own version. And the reason for that is it focused so much on the character stuff. Like, I kind of hated that Ben had to die at the end, you know, stuff like that. Like, Ben and Richard don't really come out very positive in my version, you know. There's really not a good story for Locke at the end, you know. One of the things I like about my version is that more Oceanic 815 survivors live. So like Shannon, Saeed, Jin, Sun, and several other extras and recurring characters, they all live in my version, and I think that's just an overall better thing. It just means there's more success overall, that more people got to live. And I've come to respect so much from this. I respect the writers and how much they really had to do. And furthermore, I think I've said this, and I think you may have gotten this, not so much in the last 2 seasons, but just the dedication of the extras that were on the show, how they were there week in and week out, and they never got any credit. Dustin Watchman, like all of those extras that went in to do playing Steve and Tracy Scott and all the others, Beth, just I give them so much credit too. Like they were just there and just making the show happen behind the scenes, and they never basically got no credit for it. So I'm hoping that me giving them a little credit here makes up for it a tiny bit. All right, that's it. I'm not going to take any more of your time up. Thank you so much for watching all this. Please make sure to like and subscribe once you leave the page, and share this with anybody you know that loves Lost. And as always, take care.